Good morning, it is 7 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well.
Angela Rayner says she's been cleared of deliberate wrongdoing by HMRC over her tax affairs, paving the way for a potential leadership bid.
Allies of Health Secretary Wes Streeting say he could resign today to trigger a leadership contest.
Donald Trump receives the red carpet treatment as he's welcomed to China by Xi Jinping.
Also today, we're speaking to the former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn about the prospects for the Prime Minister.
And the world's first roadside laughing gas breathalyser is trialled by 2 police forces.
Welcome to the show. We are just waiting for some GDP data to come in and for the quarter as a whole, that's for January to March, it's come in at 0.6%. That was what was expected. Of course, that included strong performance in January, plus 0.1%. February was 0.5%. March seemingly has come in a lot better than expected. March was expected to be a slight decline, negative 0.2%, but has come in as positive 0.3%. So obviously March includes the war, and that is encouraging to see March holding up as it has done in light of clearly the challenges that the war presented.
And this is growth figures, so it's basically a good temperature check on how the economy is doing as a whole, right?
Exactly. And so, you know, Q1 as a whole coming in at 0.6% growth is decent. Certainly March in positive territory when it was expected to be negative in light of the war is more than decent. It's strong, given the challenges. Well,
a bit of good news for Keir Starmer today, and he may need it, because it looks like today could be the day as the Labour Party teeters on the brink of a leadership contest. The Prime Minister has warned that a contest would plunge the party into chaos as he faces a potential challenge from his Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, and maybe others.
Well, this morning, Angela Rayner says she's been cleared of deliberate wrongdoing by HMRC following an investigation into her tax affairs, paving the way for her to be able to run for the leadership. And later today, we could see Wes Streeting possibly resigning and pulling the trigger to launch a contest.
Well, there's a lot moving already this morning. We'll keep you right up to date throughout it. First, it's worth just looking at the statement given by Angela Rayner. So this is an interview with The Guardian. She was asked directly if she's going to run. She said, whatever role I can play, I will keep pushing and pushing hard, because I want the people out there at the moment who are really struggling to know that I'm putting all my energy into fighting for them. Now, you might think that that isn't her saying definitely that she is going to run. But I think if you're asked again, repeatedly, by both the ITV and The Guardian, if you're going to run, and she just says, you know, I want to be a team player, but I want to make sure we do the right thing and have the change, I think that is a pretty clear signal from her that she is prepared to be the candidate of the left.
And also asked whether or not Keir Starmer should be stepping aside, not saying, well, he's going to have to think about it. So, you know, it is not the significant support that she could have offered. But the other thing that's just interesting about this, clearly she still failed to pay the tax. There's no change in the judgment from that from HMRC, and has had to repay tax that she underpaid. We were waiting for this further judgment from the HMRC as to whether it might have been deliberate, whether or not there was a further penalty, a punishment penalty on top of the underpaid tax. What extraordinary timing.
I know, I can't get over the timing. What's going on?
Which, I don't know. Either she already had this and sat on it until a convenient moment, or unbelievably coincidental timing for HMRC to finish their decision-making. But convenient timing, you'd have to say, for her, and the right result for her from them, from you know, that perspective, albeit obviously doesn't change the fact that there was an underpayment of tax in the first place.
What this all does is bring Angela Rayner right back into the conversation about any potential leadership challenge from the left. We can go live now to Downing Street, where our political correspondent Ali Fortescue is standing by. Look, there's been a lot of briefing, of course, hasn't there? Look, she's a team player, she wouldn't pull the trigger herself, she's not hell-bent on the leadership. But this is a pretty clear statement of intent, I would say.
Yeah, that's it. This morning, I mean, it feels like this is going to be a really important day, Sophie, because we haven't really heard from those leadership contenders. And now here we have Angela Rayner doing a TV interview, an interview with the newspapers. And on first glance, she is saying that right now she is not running for the leadership. The Prime Minister is still the Prime Minister. As we know, he is set on carrying on in that job. He's told Cabinet that. But read between the lines, and I think this is really interesting. She's saying now that those HMRC issues are settled effectively, that she's been cleared of any deliberate wrongdoing. And her allies are saying that she's a team player, she's not hell-bent on the job. But if required, and that's what we're hearing again and again, if required, she would run for the leadership, and they think that she has the 80 backers she would need. So what does if required mean? Well, there is obviously a question as to who the candidate of the soft left of the Labour Party is. Historically, their candidates have done well, have won the leadership of the Labour Party. There is no obvious candidate that everyone is uniting around. She wrote this pretty extraordinary kind of 100-word vision for the country, really. It felt almost like a manifesto, her pitch on the weekend. But in it, she also said that she would back Andy Burnham returning to Parliament so that he could stand for the leadership. His is a name that comes up again and again, but there are so many hurdles for him being able to run. He would obviously favour a longer timetable. Obviously, all eyes right now are on who is going to fire the gun, and will it be Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary? I was here yesterday when he was in and out for about 16 minutes talking to the Prime Minister. It was a King's speech. We heard nothing after, but allies have told us, allies of Wes Streeting, that we can expect, they think he is going to resign and he is going to launch a leadership challenge against the Prime Minister. So things now could move quite quickly. What are we going to see from the Prime Minister? That is a key question, because yesterday, I understand he was talking to ministers. He was again defiant, saying that a challenge from Wes Streeting would not be for the greater good of the country. Are we in a situation where the Prime Minister manages to fight off, and on the weekend they were saying the Prime Minister would fight any leadership challenge, where he manages to fight off Wes Streeting in the way that John Major did with John Redwood, and ends up in a stronger position, carrying on for longer? Or do we get an all-out leadership race? There are lots of different ways this could go. No leadership, I need to remind you, no leadership contest has been launched yet. The Prime Minister is still the Prime Minister. No one in Cabinet is resigned. Things can move quite quickly today, though, so we will stay here and we will update you whenever we hear more.
Ali, I'm just interested, like, where do we see the action? If someone announces they're running, they can just do it from their home, from Parliament? Do they just release a statement? I mean, where are our eyes today? And I guess the key point on that, what's on the PM's agenda? Where's he expected to be today?
It's a really good question. I think all eyes, we've got some NHS figures that are coming out shortly, and there is lots of talk that we could see the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, tie in his bid with positive NHS figures, and he'd want to reflect that his patch, Redbridge, did marginally better in the local elections than other places. So I think we should be keeping an eye on mid-morning and around lunchtime to see whether Wes Streeting wants to tie in a bid with those NHS figures. And I think it does seem like, I mean, there's a level of disorganisation for sure, but it does seem like a lot of this has been quite carefully coordinated. You know, you were saying Angela Rayner coming out and talking about her tax affairs being settled. The timing is extraordinary. Doing these interviews, it all seems quite coordinated when we've seen, you know, MPs resigning and ministers are now looking potentially at a cabinet resignation. It feels to me like there is a degree of coordination here, and I think if we do see a bid from Wes Streeting, it will have been quite carefully thought through.
So interesting, Ali. It does feel that way, doesn't it? And also, of course, you had that big set-piece event at the King's speech that they had to navigate around. No surprise that it's today, once that's happened, that we could see some movement. Ali Fortescue there for us in Downing Street.
Do stay with us, of course, throughout the morning. We're going to have all of the coverage you need about this. At 9:30, we'll be joined by the independent MP for Islington North, of course, the former leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn. Will be fascinating to get his perspective on all of this.
8:15, this is what I'm looking forward to. Chairman of the Nighttime Industries Association and former advisor to Andy Burnham, Sacha Lord, is going to be joining us to give his take as well, because it's part of the story as well. What is Andy Burnham going to do?
Will be a fascinating take, and he's been quite outspoken, hasn't he, about some of the economic impact of this government in the last year or two. Albeit good GDP this morning, so I have to put that to him as well. US President Donald Trump has been welcomed to Beijing by Xi Jinping this morning as their long-awaited summit finally gets going.
So this was the moment the two leaders shook hands. Didn't see any feelings of hostility there, or at least I didn't show them. The leaders of the world's two biggest powers showing a united front.
Then there was a spectacular ceremonial welcome from the military, and Xi told Trump that China and the US should be partners, not rivals.
Well, Donald Trump described a fantastic relationship between the two leaders.
You and I have known each other now for a long time. In fact, the longest relationship of our two countries that any president has had. And that's, to me, an honor. We've had a fantastic relationship. We've gotten along. When there were difficulties, we worked it out. I would call you and you would call me. And whenever we had a problem, people don't know, whenever we had a problem, we worked that out very quickly. We're going to have a fantastic future together. Such respect for China, the job you've done. You're a great leader. I say it to everybody. You're a great leader. Sometimes people don't like me saying it, but I say it anyway because it's true. I only say the truth.
Well, let's go live to Beijing, where we find our Asia correspondent, Helen Ann Smith, our US correspondent, James Matthews. James, to you first of all, I mean, that commentary from President Trump was, I would say, certainly in light of where we were a year ago, as effusively positive towards Xi as anyone could have hoped. I guess we haven't got any details of an agreement yet, but the early words were positive.
Yeah, well, certainly from Donald Trump. I mean, he could not have been more complimentary. It sounded like an old pals act. And for me, I mean, that's Trump doing the business the way Trump does business, the way Americans do, you know, laying the love on his Chinese host. Quite how it landed with the Chinese themselves, goodness only knows. I mean, Xi is inscrutable and sat pretty stony-faced. Trump, it's no surprise to hear that kind of flattery because he comes here to build bridges. He needs to reconnect with a nation that he had in his sights, tariffs, the trade war and so on. China in the bullseye of his tariff strategy, which has not worked out for him. He's coming back to build bridges and to renegotiate, essentially, on trade deals. He travelled on Air Force One with the tech bros in tow, Elon Musk and so on, and they have been lauded. Big celebration, big reception at the airport last night, big VIP reception this morning before these talks. Interestingly, in terms of news content, nothing on Truth Social from Trump yet. He was asked on his current tour of the Temple of Heaven, how were your talks, sir? He said, great, great place. China is beautiful. So that's all we've had from Trump. We have had more, Helen Ann, from the Chinese, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've actually had the Chinese readout, which is surprising. Normally the Chinese readouts are slow, but they've got ahead of it this time. Actually, I just want to sort of counterbalance James's comments about those opening remarks and that opening ceremony, because, you know, from China's perspective, whereas Trump does the kind of freewheeling chat to charm his other half, China does the pomp and ceremony to charm Trump, and they really rolled that out. What we saw this morning in that opening ceremony was sort of the top, if you like, of the kind of the arsenal they've got. They rolled out their sort of best version of their red carpet, if you like, with the Guard of Honor, with the gun salute, all of that stuff. And they know that this is a president who was wooed by that stuff. But their message was quite clear, I think. They wanted to make a very clear point that Trump is welcomed with the adequate levels of respect. That's really important in Chinese culture because they want to do business. But look, let's have a look through this readout because it's incredibly interesting. And often with the Chinese readouts, you have to read between the lines. They're not often enormously direct, and you can read as much in the order of what is said as much as in the content. it starts off with some pretty grand statements about the importance of the relationship, that the future of humanity depends on them. That's not particularly unusual for the Chinese. Quite high up, they got this new tagline in play, and the Chinese really like a tagline. They sort of like to sort of summarise things in certain sentences, and they said a few times that they want the relationship to be, quote, a relationship of constructive strategic stability, and that came up a lot. So, keep an eye and ear out for that one. I think it will continue to come up. But look, I think what was said about Taiwan was probably the most interesting thing in this statement. I think I'll read you the kind of relevant bit, because it said, on the Taiwan question, if handled properly, bilateral relations can remain generally stable. If handled poorly, the two countries will come into clash or even come into conflict. Now, look, strong words on Taiwan are not unusual for China. It is the #1 issue that they care about. But to hear President Xi Jinping himself put it in such stark language directly to a president of the United States, I'm not sure we have seen that before. I think that is notable. And it's worth saying that the Chinese playbook on this is about gradually moving the norm on this. So, it might just be a little bit of language said in a meeting. It might not particularly have taken anybody by surprise, but the fact that it was said is potentially a little move of the dial, and that matters, I think, enormously. But look, the other thing that's notable from this statement is what is not said. Coming into this, of course, we spoke a lot about the Iran war, about Trump having to come to his Chinese counterparts to ask for help. The statement said almost nothing about the situation in Iran. The only reference to it was this: the two heads of state exchanged views on major international and regional issues, including the situation in the Middle East, the crisis in Ukraine and the Korean Peninsula. That was it. And I think that kind of the omission of that, potentially the Chinese are attempting to not embarrass their guest.
Yeah, well, we'll see nothing from Trump, as I say, on Truth Social just yet. What did you make of the body language, Helen? I mean, they're not tactile individuals. Well, certainly she is not. But amidst the pomp and ceremony, there was the firm handshake. But I think a stark reminder that these are old adversaries, old hostilities, still cast a shadow over this meeting. And that handshake and nothing more, it was strictly business, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it so often is with Xi Jinping. He does a lot of these visits. This is obviously a very important one, but he's quite well used to welcoming foreign leaders. He's almost always inscrutable. His face is usually pretty still. It's hard to read much into his body language. But I would say, look, there's a language barrier between them, of course, and so there's always a little bit of awkwardness. I actually think on balance, Xi Jinping wasn't as stiff as he sometimes is.
It's all relative.
It's all relative. It's all relative. And I think that matters because I think, look, the Chinese are so delighted this is even going ahead, this summit. Coming as it does at the time of the Iran war and Trump's weakened hand, the whole thing is a real victory for them. They can be seen to be welcoming this all-important president, to be managing this all-important relationship, to be seen to be a power broker. And I think that matters. Of course, the language in their opening statements couldn't have been more different, kind of freewheeling versus heavily scripted, but, that's their different styles, isn't it?
Thanks, Helen. He's gone to the Temple of Heaven, Donald Trump, for a tour. So that's two engagements today. Tomorrow he has tea with President Xi before flying back to Washington, D.C. Much more to come from here throughout the day.
Thank you very much indeed. Jim Matthews and Helen Ann Smith speaking to us there from Beijing. Right, there's a lot to talk about today, you might have realised. We can speak now to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray.
Hi, morning.
Great to have you with us. So I guess the fact that you're doing the morning interview round, suggests that you're one of a few band of MPs that Number 10 can rely on not to run for the leadership.
Well, I think I've come on as a Treasury Minister, and I'd really like to talk about the GDP figures, which have just come out at 7 a.m. this morning, because they show the really strong economic growth we had. Now, this is obviously before the war in Iran, and despite the fact the Prime Minister took the right decision not to follow Trump into the war in Iran, it's going to have an impact on us. But what this shows is that the Chancellor has the right economic plan, which puts us in a stronger position to weather any impacts that come our way because of what's happening in the Middle East.
I love the fact you got that in, despite the fact, no, I was going to ask you about it, don't worry. I know you kind of worried about, the interview going a completely different way as well. How you've got those positive figures. How worried are you about the current instability impacting the economy? Leadership instability?
Well, I think we've had, instability over the last couple of days, and in some ways that's a preview of what could happen if there were leadership election. And that's why I think having a leadership election would be the wrong choice for us as a party, because it would bring huge instability, and it would put at risk the stability that we've delivered and that we've built into the public finances and the economy. So for me, I think what we should be focused on, rather than turning inward as a party, we should be focused on what's important to people across the country. So cost of living, NHS, getting the Strait of Hormuz reopened. It's our responsibility to focus on what's important to people across the country.
Can you put like an estimate on how much the instability over the last couple of days has already cost the economy? Do you know?
Well, I can't put an exact estimate on that at this stage, because it's only been the last couple of days we've had this.
But borrowing costs have gone up, right?
Well, look, I wouldn't comment on individual movements within the market as a Treasury Minister, but what I would say is that the stability that we've brought to the economy is highly valuable. It's a very important factor that Rachel Reeves has delivered as Chancellor for our government. And what's important for us is to make sure...
I do need to push back a bit on that, though, right? Because a lot of people would say, where is the stability on the economy that you're talking about there, right? Growth has been pretty pancake-like. I know that you
we just talked about the GDP growth.
I know you point to that one, but I'm talking about throughout the whole time that Labour has been in power here, right? Government borrowing costs, very high cost of living pressures still really, really felt by people.
No, look, let me make this point, because it's fair enough to say that people are feeling the pressure of the cost of living. It is absolutely not the case that the cost of living challenges people face have gone away. They are very live, they are very present. I know that when I talk to people in my constituency or across the country in the elections just gone. People want us to do more on the cost of living. But look at the economic data that we had before the war in Iran. Look at what the Chancellor has done. That puts us in a stronger position. It shows we've got the right economic plan. It doesn't mean the challenges have gone away, or it doesn't mean we're not going to be impacted by the war in Iran, but it does mean that our approach to the economy is the right one.
Can I talk to you about the leadership? Because it feels like today could be the day, right? We've had Angela Rayner coming out this morning, giving interviews to saying that she's been cleared of deliberate wrongdoing over tax affairs. Asked directly if she's going to run, she just says, I want to play my part in doing everything we possibly can do to deliver change. I mean, it sounds like she's running.
Well, look, I think what Angela Rayner also said in the interview this morning is that she wasn't going to trigger a leadership contest. And I think a leadership contest would be the wrong choice for us as a party, because it would mean we'd be looking inward. It would cause that huge instability, which is so detrimental to what we're trying to do as a government, and distracts us from focusing on what people want us to focus on.
She might not have to trigger it, because it looks like West Streeting is going to trigger it, right?
Well, look, this is getting into speculation about what might or might not happen, but what my message...
Just speculation.
Well, look,
I'm not
message...
just pulling this, out of nowhere, am I? Come on, we've seen what's happened over the last week. You know it as well.
But, Sophie, my message to anyone, any of my colleagues in Parliament, would be to take a deep breath, take a step back, realise that we're less than 2 years into this government, recognise the importance of the stability in the economy, in our government that we've delivered, recognise the impact that has in terms of our strong economic data, which we've had today, and make sure that we're focused on people's priorities rather than turning inward. Because I think if we, at this time, when people have just sent us a message last week in the local elections, to meet their frustrations by delivering what we promised to, I don't think people would forgive us if we responded to that by turning inward.
If there is a leadership contest, will Keir Starmer stand in it?
Well, he said on Monday that if there were one, he would stand.
So he will stand, he'll run as a candidate if there is a leadership contest?
Well, he said that on Monday, and after his speech on Monday, he was asked a similar question directly, and he said he would stand. But I just underline what I said a few moments ago, that I think having a leadership election would be the wrong choice for us as a party.
You obviously speak to Keir Starmer. Does he want to fight the next election for Labour?
Yes.
And does he want a full 10 years, as he said in The Observer?
Well, look, there's going to be a general election in a few years' time. It will be up for the people to decide, what happens to us as a Labour government at the end of this Parliament.
Does he stand by that? He wants he's got a 10-year project, is what he said to The Observer. Does he stand by that?
What I think he was talking about was this 10-year plan for national renewal, because what we said going into the election in 2024 was that, look, after 14 years of the Conservatives, this is not something we're going to turn around overnight in 1 year or 2 years. In fact, it is a whole 10-year project of investment, of getting our country back on its feet. Now, when we're going into the next election, people will want to see progress on that. We can't say to people at the next election, don't worry, it'll take 10 years until you feel anything. People want to feel that change starting to make an impact on their lives. But I think we also need to be honest with people that really transforming our country takes time.
OK. How's Keir Starmer's mood?
I think he's really focused on what we're doing. If you think about the cabinet meeting we had on Tuesday, I know it's not right for me to talk about what happens at the cabinet meetings.
So, you may as well.
Well, no, I don't know. I don't. All right? I think it's important we have cabinet as a private space to have conversations. Call me old-fashioned, but I think that is important.
Are you frustrated with some of your colleagues who've taken a different approach?
But what you asked me about Keir Starmer, and what he was focused on there is what are we doing about the situation globally? What are we doing to support people across the country? What are we doing to deliver against our priorities? And he is so determined to deliver against what we promised that that's what he wants the focus to be.
But what's his mood? Is he angry? Is he, has it actually given him a new fire in his belly? Well,
I think if you think about what's happened to Keir during his time as leader, there's been several times whilst he's been leader when people have sort of thought, oh, he's not going to survive this, or, this is going to be difficult for him. And he comes out fighting, and he's defiant about that.
Is he stubborn?
He's determined, and he's focused on making sure that he gets on with what he promised to do. And I think what you're seeing at the moment, as you see with him throughout his time as leader, is that when challenged, he pushes forward and says, no, I'm going to deliver, I'm going to get on with this, because that's his determination coming out.
Can I ask you about Andy Burnham as well? Because obviously there's a lot of talk about whether or not the National Executive Committee is going to go for a longer contest to allow him time to come in and get a seat. I'm not going to ask you what should happen, because you're going to say, oh, it's a matter for the NEC, it's nothing to do with me. What would you like to happen? If there is a contest, would you like Andy Burnham to have the opportunity to come and stand?
Well, you kind of mocked me there for saying it's a matter for the NEC, but it is a matter for the NEC.
But what do you think?
They're the ones that take the decision.
That's why I said, what do you think, though? What would you like, personally?
Well, what I think, personally, I've said, is that I don't think having a leadership election is the right choice for us to take. It's not right for the country. We shouldn't be having a leadership election. So I don't think we should have a leadership election. Andy Burnham is someone who I work with very closely in his role as the Mayor of Greater Manchester, and my role as Chief Secretary. He's a fantastic mayor. We work really well together, get on really well, working out how we're going to invest in growth in Manchester and the North West.
He should stay there. Is that the message?
Well, no, I'm saying that I work really closely with him on that, and it's a really important role that he's playing. And it's really important that we work together, across the Labour Party, all tiers of government, to improve people's quality of life.
So you think he should stay doing the great job that he's doing?
I think he is doing a fantastic job. He's doing a brilliant job. And we're working really closely together. And it's really important for me to work with mayors, not just Andy, but also Sadiq in London. He's doing a brilliant job, and Tracy Brabin in West Yorkshire, right across the country, because one of the things we were elected on is to improve cost of living and living standards in every part of the UK.
Just finally, because look, it is bringing us all back to those years of the Conservative Party leadership challenges, right? And I always remember, Grant Shapps had his spreadsheet. He was working out exactly what MP would vote to who. You're a numbers guy. Do you reckon Keir Starmer's got the numbers to fend any of this off?
Well, let me tell you some numbers which I think are important about what we're doing as a government. NHS waiting lists.
Oh, come on.
Are now the lowest in 3 years.
Come on.
No, I really want to talk about some of the stuff we're doing as a government.
This is part of the problem that this government has, that you don't directly answer questions. If you think it's a stupid question, just tell me it's a stupid question, but don't answer a different question.
Well, so what was your question again, then?
I was saying, do you think Keir Starmer has the numbers to fend off any challenge?
Well, as I said, I don't think there should be a leadership election. And I think what I would say to people on various spreadsheets, if there are any such things, is that all of our colleagues in Parliament should take a deep breath, take a step back, reflect on the fact that we're less than 2 years into a 5-year Parliament, reflect on what we want to do across the course of this Parliament, and make sure that we don't take a decision which ends up distracting from the crucial work we need to do. Because I think if we turn inward on ourselves and stop focusing on people's priorities across the country, people might never forgive us for that.
OK, thank you very much indeed. James Murray speaking to us there from the government. Thank you very much indeed. Well, it's a big day in Westminster. It's also a big day on the international stage as well. We're going to be taking a closer look at Donald Trump's opening remarks on his visit to China with a senior analyst at the Interparliamentary Alliance on China. That's coming up next.
I urge you not to look away.
If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict.
The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today.
How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on.
I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Welcome back. Let's get you more details on that encouraging GDP data that we got at the top of the hour. Paul's here and got all the numbers for us. Paul.
Yeah, your early morning charts, Wilf, which no day should begin without. Positive growth figures and positive news for the government. Get that. These are the figures for March. This shows monthly figures going back to the start of 2025. This is the number we're looking at. 0.3% announced today. Economist expectations, market expectations of a contraction, the economy shrinking, being in negative territory, because March was the first month of the war, the US-Israeli attacks on Iran, with all the consequent effects on energy prices in particular. It felt like it had to be negative for the economy, but it's shown some positive growth. To get into the weeds a tiny bit, there's been a little bit of a revision, as they call it, of the February number. That's come down, as has the January number, when growth was flat. So, but it does balance out to a positive picture, one that, frankly, is totally unexpected, and one that you've already had the Minister this morning welcoming. We can look at how that affects the quarterly number. This is the figures for March, first 3 months of the year. The quarters are the economic signposts for the year. And again, positive territory. That was expected, 0.6%. But it is the enduring strength, relative strength, let's call it that, of the economy in March that really sticks out. And there's some notes in here from the ONS that are striking. They do business and workforce surveys. They talk to employers, they talk to companies about how they're feeling about their business. And they've had companies telling them they are more positive about revenue and about their growth in March than they expected, turnover growing and potential redundancies, as they call them, in decline. So they might have been expecting to be laying people off because the economy has been slowing down at the end of last year. But there's some strength there, and we of course have to see. This is month one of the war. We know the inflationary impacts are starting to be felt. Much of the economic impact is still in the post, if you like. But this is some positive news.
Definitely much better than expected for March. Obviously, partly because of the political impacts, we've been looking at borrowing costs. Bond markets aren't open yet, but everyone will be watching that at the open in half an hour's time.
Yeah, indeed. All of these numbers are looking back at how the economy's performed. We can bring one more chart. This is the 10-year gilt. This is essentially the price. This is the indicative interest rate that the government pays to borrow money. We've talked about it a lot, haven't we, with political instability being something the markets do not like. And it's worth looking at, I think, this morning, just reminding us where we are, because we not only have the likelihood of a leadership challenge, but Angela Rayner entering the fray. Of course, Rayner on the left of the party, some of her policies, perhaps more inclination to spend. Would that indicate? Markets would be nervous about that, given how much debt the UK already has. And you can see how we have marched up. Now, some of this is the war, some of this is energy prices. But in the last week, we have got to an 18-year high 2 days ago, when the instability around the Prime Minister started to feel like it was terminal for Sir Keir Starmer. It did dip off a little bit. Some of that was yesterday, when Wes Streeting was preparing to resign, something we're still waiting for. So the markets, while there are lots of factors in here, and they don't move as a herd, there are lots of people making decisions, there is a distaste for political instability that the UK pays for in its borrowing costs. It means the government is spending more of our revenue, our taxpayer revenue, on meeting those bills. So it'll be very interesting to see when the markets open what happens to this line and when the contenders, if there is a leadership election, when they become clearer.
Paul, great stuff. We'll be watching those UK bond markets very closely when they open at 8 a.m. We're also, of course, watching today any headlines that come out of the US-China visit taking place, 2-day visit for President Trump to Beijing. Let's discuss the significance of that now with the senior analyst of the Interparliamentary Alliance on China, Chung Kwong, who joins us now. Very good morning to you. Have you been surprised and struck by the positive rhetoric in these early parts of the meeting, or did you expect that and all that matters is any final agreement or not?
I'm not entirely surprised by what comes out of the headlines this morning, especially from the Xinhua Chinese side of the readout. It seems to me that, as expected, they are focusing a lot on trade, on stabilizing the US-China relationship, and also China making clear that Taiwan is something that's non-negotiable when it comes to its own territory and its sovereignty over, claimed sovereignty over Taiwan. So I think it does not come as a surprise to many of the China watchers or people who are concerned about the US-China summit.
What are you watching out for most of all in the next 24 hours? Is anything that might come on the trade side of the ledger going to be significantly outweighed by the geopolitical side of the ledger, be it Iran or Taiwan?
I'd say it would be 50-50 because both countries actually need headline wins when it comes to trade. So just quite recently, the US has got its export license back on plants and beef and other things to China. And at the same time, the US had agreed to sell certain chips, semiconductor chips, to China as well. So all these looks to me that they are now releasing the good news. But at the same time, there are headlines that came out that said both Wang Yi prior to the trip and Xi Jinping face-to-face, Xi Jinping said, if the US did not handle the Taiwan situation well, then there might be conflict. And this can be read as some sort of indirect warning or even threat towards the US and say arms sales or certain things are red lines for China, and those things are non-negotiable, as we have seen in the past. So I don't think that it will be 100% good news, and we don't know what actually happened because no further detailed readout has been coming out. But my guess would be there will be some good news, but the geopolitical things might not have a significant shift.
I'm interested in your take on the scale. I mean, look, this is obviously a given that China cares more about the US than us or than any other country. But the scale of difference in welcome that we've seen compared to when the UK, when Keir Starmer went recently, and I guess paired with that, the extent to which UK positioning on China is likely to follow the direction of US positioning. If there is a slight easing, be it on trade or in other areas, do you think the UK will follow suit or not?
I'd say the UK is way ahead when it comes to befriending China in general, in my personal opinion. And at the same time, if you look at the level of people greeting Xi Jinping at the airport, or the fact that Xi Jinping himself accompanied Trump in Beijing to go to historical sites and so on, you see there's definitely a difference when it comes to how they treat country leaders, and the UK is definitely not treated as well as Trump, or even some had said that it has been quite humiliating for the UK when Keir Starmer was there. So I think those things added up reflects how Trump or Beijing sees the importance of this visit or importance of the message that this meeting will send. And at the same time, I'd say the UK might see this at the end of this meeting, that it is a sign from the US that said, we can continue further engaging with China, being further economically dependent on China and opening more rooms for trade, even though the last visit did not result in really promising deals. So I'd say the UK government at this point will take any sign as a good sign to further engage with China, because they believe that China will be able to rescue the economy of the world and the UK as well.
Chung, thanks so much for joining us. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Now, we want to focus on some news regarding the Reform UK Party, because Nigel Farage is being investigated by the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner for not declaring a personal donation of £5 million. Now, Nigel Farage's argument is that he was under no obligation to declare the gift from billionaire reform backer Christopher Harborne because it had been given before he was an MP.
Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates.
Nigel Farage may be in serious trouble and could even be suspended from Parliament. This is why. The Reform UK leader is facing an investigation from Parliament's sleaze watchdog and could face a second investigation by the Electoral Commission. It's all over the £5 million given to him by Thailand-based British crypto billionaire Christopher Harborne. Harborne is Reform's biggest donor, with more than £22 million of declared donations given to both the Reform and Brexit parties. But this is about some undeclared money, a £5 million gift given by Harborne to Farage in early 2024. At that point, Farage wasn't planning to stand as an MP, but in June 2024, he U-turned and became an MP in July 2024. That timeline could be a problem, because the rules say new MPs must register any registrable benefit other than earnings received in the 12 months before their election. Reform have come out fighting, saying they look forward to this being put to bed and that no rules were broken. Farage says the money was a gift for his own personal security, but when challenged has been testy about the issue.
You didn't declare it, why not?
Don't need to.
The rules actually say,
you're
saying you don't need, I've read them too, the rules actually say, if any doubt, the benefit should be registered.
There is no doubt at all. I'm really sorry.
Donor.
I'm really sorry. I've got other interviews to do.
One other thing
you want to discuss the elections,
Nigel,
we'll discuss them. If not, I won't bother.
Let me ask you
it's
one
a waste of space.
Okay,
Sky News, typical.
Why does all this matter? Well, the parliamentary watchdog can impose some serious consequences. For the worst offences that are proven, MPs can be suspended for a period of time. If that is longer than 10 sitting days, then the constituents can recall the MP. If 10% of Clacton voters sign the resulting petition, Farage would lose his seat. In pole position after the elections, top in the polls, suddenly Nigel Farage is facing one of his most serious challenges yet.
Well, an awful lot going on, of course, and we will keep a very, very close eye on what happens when it comes to that donation and the investigation into it as well. I did just want to bring you some words we've had this morning from Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, silent until now in all this leadership speculation. And I think it's pretty interesting to see that she has actually made an intervention, just getting it for you now on my phone. I wasn't sure how long there was left on that, to be completely honest. So Rachel Reeves had said this morning, Labour MPs have got to make an important decision, have got an important decision to make today, but the numbers show that the economy is growing and that when we entered this conflict, our economy was growing strongly because of the decisions that I have made as Chancellor. We shouldn't put that at risk. So clear intervention there.
Yeah, and I think what's quite interesting is a lot of talk coming into today that there was going to be NHS data that might put a little bit of wind in the sails of the Health Secretary. Of course, there's GDP data as well, and it's put a little bit of wind in the sails of the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. So, you know, if today is the day, I think we get a preview there of what the argument's going to be. The economy's improving. Do you really want to derail all of that? That's going to be the argument. At the same time, you'd also have to say that Angela Rayner's taken a little bit of the wind out of the sails of the Health Secretary too. It's
fast moving. Let's talk to someone who I think might agree with Rachel Reeves, actually. We can speak now to Luke Akehurst, who's one of the Labour MPs supporting the Prime Minister. Critically, also a member of the party's National Executive Committee, so one of those people with an awful lot of power in their hands, potentially in the weeks ahead. Thank you very much for being with us. First of all, should there be a leadership contest?
Not. I think that even the speculation has been damaging, where it's cost about $3 billion in terms of the bond markets being destabilised by the potential for political instability. That's money that we could have spent on public services, and it's divisive. It looks chaotic. Who knows what the outcome might be? That it could be, you know, if Wes started this, it could actually end us up with a Prime Minister that's a long way to the left of him or Keir or me. I really hope that people come back from the brink and work as a team, because the important thing is delivering for the British people, and those GDP figures today show that delivery is happening. We need to get on with that. We want to get re-elected. It's about making people's lives better, not having internal fights over who the PM is.
Do you not think that the Labour Party membership, possibly much a wider group of that, if we look at, you know, the improvement in the polling and performance of the Greens, do want a Prime Minister to the left of Keir Starmer?
I lost all except 2 of my councillors in County Durham, in North Durham last year to Reform, and Reform swept traditional Labour heartlands last Thursday in the north of England and the Midlands. So I think it would be an absolutely bizarre response to that to say that the Labour Party was getting a message that it should veer off to the left. And I would really resist that. That is not what people voted for in the general election. They voted for a moderate mainstream Labour Party, and we need to stick to the manifesto and the political positioning that won us the general election.
As a member of the National Executive Committee, you effectively set the framework for any leadership contest. How will you be voting if a leadership contest is triggered? And I know that you don't want to be. Would you go in favour of a longer contest that would allow Andy Burnham to come back to Westminster?
Well, I don't want to prejudge decisions that the NEC might make. We have a meeting scheduled anyway on Tuesday, which I assume we would use to agree procedures and timetable. But I don't think that any Labour NEC would ever alter the timetable to suit the interests of someone that wanted to be a candidate but wasn't actually qualified to be one at the start of the process, and the length of delay that you would need to accommodate a by-election being fought for. I don't think that that's a realistic ask. So if a contest started right now, I just don't see how it's physically possible for Andy Burnham to participate in that.
This feels quite an important thing that you're saying right now. So you're saying that if a contest was triggered today or tomorrow, Andy Burnham, looking at the rules as you know it, he's not running, he's not in it.
You have to be a member of Parliament or at the very least a member of the House of Lords, so that hasn't been done since 1963 or something, in order to be the Prime Minister. So we could have a cast of thousands. How about a by-election for David Miliband or a by-election for Ed Balls? We're not. I don't think the Labour Party's rules and procedures are there to be tweaked to suit one particular person.
Reflecting on all of that, was it wrong to block Andy Burnham in the first place when he could have already been an MP? And clearly there is a significant weight of democratic views that he should at least potentially be a candidate.
I mean, I wasn't on the NEC Officers Committee, which took that decision about the Gorton and Denton by-election, but I take collective responsibility for it, and as a member of the wider NEC, and I think it was the right thing to say that we don't want our metro mayors to be causing metro mayor by-elections and trying to come into Parliament. I think it would be a completely different situation once Andy has completed his current term of office as Mayor of Manchester. I don't think there's many obstacles at all to him becoming an MP, but he took that decision to leave Parliament in, I think it was 2016, to go off and pursue a different political pathway as a metro mayor, and our political system doesn't really provide for people that are off being mayors or council leaders or in the Scottish Parliament or whatever. There isn't really an easy mechanism for them to slide back into Westminster. That's just a kind of unintended consequence of a decision he took quite a while ago.
We've seen Angela Rayner throw a hat in the ring. Do you welcome? Well, I mean, maybe that's going a little bit far.
I'm not sure she did, actually.
Yeah, that was probably going slightly far. I mean, what's your reading of what she said this morning?
She said she wasn't going to trigger a contest and that she was, has been cleared and she might want to stand. And she kind of implied that she didn't want to run against Keir if he wanted to stand. But I mean, as someone, I think she's a great asset to the party and was a really good deputy leader. And I'd like to see her back at the cabinet table. But again, she represents quite a different approach to the one that voters thought that they were getting at the general election. I think people would be entitled, with any change of Prime Minister, we're going to come under immense pressure to say, oh, you've got to call a snap general election because this wasn't what we voted for. And actually, we need to stick to delivering the programme that we were elected on.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Really interesting to get your view there, particularly, of course, that all-important perspective from the NEC meeting Tuesday. Thank you.
Now, of course, just 1 week on from those disastrous local and nationwide election results for the government, which might still prove fatal for Sir Keir Starmer's premiership.
And with the country facing another potential leadership contest in Westminster, the question is this what voters wanted? Well, our People and Politics correspondent Nick Martin has been finding out.
Do you think the Prime Minister should be given cut some slack, or do you think he should
be gone?
Why?
I don't know. He's not good, is he?
I'm just asking people whether they think the Prime Minister should stay or get out. What do you think?
Get out.
Why is that?
It's just bobbins, and no good. Bobbins. Not heard that for a while.
Do you think he should be given a chance to govern a bit more, or do you think his time is up?
2 years is only a short amount of time, to be quite frank.
It's going to be a tough one for him. It's going to be tough, isn't it? Well, who else do we vote for? Green Party? So it's too early to say about Green Party, and it's too early to say anything about them yet.
So would you say you're a Labour voter, but you're kind of losing faith?
Yes,
in them?
yes.
The problem, I think, is this. Labour, in a post-Brexit environment, are trying to bridge the great chasm in our politics. You end up being everyone's second-best choice. You end up falling into the valley of electoral death.
Do you think they've made you better off or worse off?
Worse off.
Do you think the Prime Minister is in a difficult situation? Some people clearly want him to step down and move aside, and some people think he should be given more of a chance to run the country.
Well, I think he's been given ample chance, quite frankly. I don't think he's done what he needs to do properly. I think he needs to either step down or change how he is.
He needs to actually provide that substance. He needs to actually win over his MPs, his members, with an actual offer. And so far, we haven't seen it.
You can watch all of Nick Martin's excellent deep dive onto what voters are feeling. It's available on YouTube later today. Just scan the QR code and you'll find links to it.
Well, it's another extremely busy day ahead in Westminster. Things feel very, very poised and volatile. Ali's in Downing Street for us. And Ali, there's already been movement where you are this morning. We've had that intervention from Rachel Reeves.
Yeah, that's right. So Rachel Reeves came out backing the Prime Minister. I mean, I've not seen so many cabinet interviews in such a short space of time as we've seen over the last few days. There is literally no knowing what's going to happen on Downing Street at the moment. A door opens and a cabinet minister walks to the cameras and backs the Prime Minister, because we know that the Prime Minister on Tuesday went to his cabinet meeting, said effectively put up or shut up. Either there's no leadership challenge at the moment, either you're with me or against me. And we are seeing senior ministers rallying, saying there shouldn't be a leadership contest. But right now, all eyes are obviously on Wes Streeting, whose allies have said that we're expecting him to resign and to go for the leadership. So people have come and gone. But actually, you know, right now, there have been no cabinet resignations. There is not a leadership challenge. But things, I think, today could start to move quite quickly. And we've also heard, as we were talking about earlier, from Angela Rayner, not saying she's running right now, but it was an interesting interview, and her allies say, if required, she would run.
Ali, great stuff. Thanks so much for that, Ali Fortescue in Downing Street for us. And, you know, amazing that we're 8 a.m. nearly, and we've had so many moving parts to this already. Most, I think, notably, the Angela Rayner development, but I think additionally the GDP data, you know, in critical moments, whilst most of these MPs are probably undecided and working out which way to go or not, that sort of thing makes a difference.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to see what the bond markets do as well. They open at 8.
It's totally right. And the other thing I'd say is the change in tone coming from Team Starmer throughout the week has been quite something to behold. They, rightly or wrongly, and it might be wrongly, it might be misplaced, but they have got a lot more confidence right now. You know, you heard it from James Murray, you hear from Rachel Reeves, who's been silent until now, coming out saying, given the economic data, now is not the time. Then you hear someone directly on the National Executive Committee, which, let's not forget, has an awful lot of power right now, saying now is not time for change, and Andy Burnham basically hasn't got a chance of getting in if the leadership contest is called now.
We shall see what happens, of course, throughout the morning. We're not going to break away from the coverage for you. We'll be back after the break with all of the latest from Downing Street and across the country. All eyes to see where Angela Rayner and Wes Streeting land today. We'll also have the latest from Beijing, where President Trump is, of course, at the moment.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter.
I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story.
The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access.
Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Rich and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, good morning from both of us on a busy day in politics.
Angela Rayner says she's been cleared of deliberate wrongdoing by HMRC over her tax affairs, paving the way for a potential leadership bid.
Allies of Health Secretary Wes Streeting say he could resign today to trigger a leadership contest.
Partners, not rivals. President Trump receives the red carpet treatment as he's welcomed by President Xi in China.
We'll also be speaking to the former Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, about the prospects for the Prime Minister.
And the world's first roadside laughing gas breathalyzer is trialled by 2 police forces.
Good morning, welcome to the programme. Well, it looks like today could be the day as the Labour Party teeters on the brink of a leadership contest. The Prime Minister and his allies have warned that would plunge the party into chaos, but he faces a potential looming challenge from his Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, and perhaps others as well.
Well, this morning, Angela Rayner says she's been cleared of deliberate wrongdoing by HMRC following an investigation into her tax affairs, paving the way for her to potentially decide whether to run for the leadership.
She spoke to ITV News and she didn't deny she had leadership ambitions.
Would you like to lead that team? Would you want to be Prime Minister?
I want to deliver as part of the team. And I've always said that it is a team effort. It's not one person, it's not a presidential situation. We all have to pull together to deliver that.
But would you want to lead the team? Because the team does have to have a leader. Would you want to be leader?
We do have to have a leader, and we've got a leader, and I'm not going to go into hypotheticals, but...
So you're not ruling out potentially taking over as leader?
But I have said that we have to do better.
Well, later today we could see the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, potentially resigning, as some allies are suggesting he might, and that could trigger a contest.
And we've also seen, of course, I guess, this groundswell of support from Keir Starmer's allies. We've heard from Rachel Reeves saying now's not the time for a contest. Here's Chief Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray.
I think what you're seeing at the moment, as you see with him throughout his time as leader, is that when challenged, he pushes forward and says, no, I'm going to deliver, I'm going to get on with this, because that's his determination coming out.
Well, there's lots of moving parts. Let's get back out to Ali, who's in Downing Street for us. Ali, good morning again. I mean, I guess earlier this morning we thought all eyes on the Health Secretary, but there's now suddenly quite a few people to be keeping our eyes on both sides of the ledger, from the Chancellor backing the Prime Minister to possibly Angela Rayner kind of joining Wes Streeting in the challenger camp.
Yes, a lot is going on today. There are so many moving parts, but it feels like this is going to be a really big day, Wilf and Sophie. We've just seen the Chancellor coming out here on Downing Street, and I have to say, we have seen a surprising number of cabinet ministers opening doors on Downing Street and coming out and coming to the cameras and backing the Prime Minister. That's what she just did. She said this is not the time for a leadership challenge. We got the same message from James Murray talking to you, Sophie, this morning. But then on the other side, we have Wes Streeting, whose allies are telling us that we're expecting him to resign and go for the leadership. We're expecting NHS figures a bit later on. So will we see this big moment, finally someone throwing their hat into the ring for the leadership after all of this speculation? We've been on Downing Street for days, seeing people coming and going, but will that be the moment that this turns into a leadership race where the Prime Minister of this country is threatened with losing his job? And as you say, a fascinating intervention from Angela Rayner, who has effectively said that she said she's not running now for sure. She has sort of backed the need to not have chaos. You could say that she's sort of backed the Prime Minister, but she says she wants to see big change. But her allies telling me that if required, she would stand, and they think that they have the numbers, but that she's a team player and she's not hell-bent on being Prime Minister. And she was also obviously talking about settling her tax affairs. So I would definitely not rule out an Angela Rayner bid.
Gosh, so interesting, Ali. Great stuff. Thank you so much for that. And I think there's two big standouts for me this morning. The first is the GDP data, which we're going to go into in more detail with Paul Kelso. Much better than expected for the month of March. 0.3% growth. The forecast was for negative 0.2. It doesn't change the trend of growth for the overall 2 years of government. It doesn't significantly change, of course, the trend of political pressure the Prime Minister is under. But if you are on the morning when you're possibly expecting a rival to announce the leadership contest and you're thinking, grab anywhere we can get a little bit of good news to help me, this is a gift for the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. But the other one, I think, which is really interesting, is just the prospect of being very clear to Wes Streeting, potentially before he goes over the top, that there will be a much-liked candidate that would challenge him, not necessarily the Prime Minister, in Angela Rayner. Does he pause for thought and think, I'm not going to win this? And we'll see as the day goes on. But I think two massive curveballs there thrown in this morning that we didn't expect.
The thing as well is, just to go back to the interview that we had with Luke Akehurst, you've probably got no idea who Luke Akehurst is, no offence to him, but he's a Labour MP, but he's a member of the National Executive Committee, which means what he says really, really matters, because these guys set the whole framework for a leadership contest. They've got a lot of power. And he said very clearly that if a contest is triggered now, he does not see a route for Andy Burnham to be in that contest as a result of the fact that they can't just change the rules just for one person. Let's just listen to what he had to say, because it is significant.
If a contest started right now, I just don't see how it's physically possible for Andy Burnham to participate in that.
This feels quite an important thing that you're saying right now. So you're saying that if a contest was triggered today or tomorrow, Andy Burnham, looking at the rules as you know it, he's not running, he's not in it.
You have to be a member of Parliament or at the very least a member of the House of Lords, so that hasn't been done since 1963 or something, in order to be the Prime Minister. So we could have a cast of thousands. How about a by-election for David Miliband or a by-election for Ed Balls? Why we're not? I don't think the Labour Party's rules and procedures are there to be tweaked to suit one particular person.
And look, obviously he has a dog in this fight. He doesn't want there to be a contest. But I think that is an interesting lens to look through the Angela Rayner intervention, because if people on the left are hearing that there's no way for Andy Burnham to get back in time, they need a candidate. Could it be Angela Rayner?
And the intervention from Angela Rayner, is it an intervention or is it... there's lots of ways this could go, right? Does the Prime Minister now come out and say, it's clear Angela made an honest mistake? By the way, it was still a big mistake. You're housing minister and you don't pay a housing tax. But if it was an honest, albeit glaring mistake, he could bring her back. He could bring her back straight away. And we just don't know which way it's going to go.
We don't. We genuinely don't.
Hours.
Don't go anywhere, basically.
We don't really know what she wants from this, because she obviously didn't challenge the Prime Minister in that clip, and I think will be fascinating. So let's keep an eye on it all.
Yeah, don't go anywhere. Stay with us throughout the morning as we get more reaction from across the political spectrum. At 9:30, we are going to be joined by the independent MP for Islington North. You probably know him, the former leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn. And in just a moment, we'll be speaking to the chairman of the Nighttime Industries Association and the former advisor to Andy Burnham, Sacha Lord. We'll get his take too. Now to international affairs, because the US President Donald Trump has been welcomed to Beijing by Xi Jinping this morning as their long-awaited summit finally gets going. This was the moment the two leaders shook hands, the leaders of the world's two biggest powers showing a united front. And then we had a pretty spectacular ceremonial welcome from the military, and President Xi told Donald Trump that China and the US should be partners, not rivals. President Trump described a fantastic relationship between the two leaders.
You and I have known each other now for a long time. In fact, the longest relationship of our two countries that any president and president has had. And that's, to me, an honor. We've had a fantastic relationship. We've gotten along. When there were difficulties, we worked it out. I would call you and you would call me. And whenever we had a problem, people don't know, whenever we had a problem, we worked that out very quickly. We're going to have a fantastic future together. Such respect for China, the job you've done. You're a great leader. I say it to everybody. You're a great leader. Sometimes people don't like me saying it, but I say it anyway because it's true. I only say the truth. Let's bring in Helen Smith from Beijing. Helen, are we seeing rhetoric only, I guess, because we haven't seen any final announcements, but seeing good, encouraging comments when it comes to trade, but not quite seeing them when it comes to perhaps the more important geopolitics?
Yeah, I mean, we've only had so far a sort of a Chinese readout. We haven't heard anything from the American side yet. And I'm sure we will hear sort of, not just from Trump himself, but I'm sure there will also be details about some trade deals struck and so on and so forth. So all we have is the Chinese side. And remember that there is a real art to dissecting a Chinese readout, because there's always usually as much in what's not said as what is said, and you have to read between the lines a little bit. But look, before we dive into that, I just want to sort of comment a bit on the body language and the staging and the pomp and the ceremony, because all of that matters a lot here. This all-important summit between these two enormously powerful men. Every individual flower arrangement and walk and soldier matters enormously. And I think China did its bit, really, by sort of rolling out the red carpet. What we saw this morning was sort of the highest level of kind of ceremonial welcome that China has to offer. Trump's not the only person to have got that treatment, but I think it's notable that he indeed did get it. And then I think Trump did sort of his bit in terms of his sort of attempt at charm, and that was a sort of relatively sort of freewheeling opening comments where he really sort of lavished praise on Xi Jinping personally and on the Chinese state. Worth saying that actually a lot of his comments were regurgitated within the Chinese readout, so I think that's a bit of a signal that the Chinese were pleased to hear it, that they took it pretty well. The body language between the two has been a little stiff, but I think it would be. They still come as sort of great competitors together. They don't speak the same language. Xi Jinping is always pretty inscrutable during these events. But I think there was the odd signal from Xi Jinping that he's happy that Trump is here, that he feels in control, that he feels that it's a good look for China, really, that Trump comes here at this moment, potentially also asking for help on his war in Iran. But look, I want to just run you through some of the things that were said in that Chinese readout, because I think they were pretty telling. At the top, she talked about just the sort of the gravity of the whole thing, if you like. There were some pretty bold statements about this sort of, you know, once in 100-year change that we're living through, that managing this relationship benefits the sort of future of humanity. So pretty grand statements about just how important this is. I want to point you towards what was said about Taiwan, though. Taiwan, of course, for China, the all-important issue, and I think it was the moment within the statement where there was a little bit more revealed, I think, than before. I want to just read you this. They said, on the issue of Taiwan, if handled properly, bilateral relations can remain generally stable. If handled poorly, the two countries will clash or even come into conflict. And look, that's relatively strong language on the Taiwan question. It's not unprecedented language, but I think it's really notable that language of that strength was put directly to a president of the United States in person and then repeated in the readouts. I mean, this is all sort of reading in between the lines stuff, but it matters because the Chinese are increasingly framing the Taiwan question as part of the conflict between these two great superpowers. They are essentially saying, look, the United States, you need to sort of do your bit, otherwise sort of perfect relations between us will never be achieved. That's the subtext. And remember that their playbook is slow, incremental, gradual change, just the planting of the seed in Donald Trump's mind that reunification is ultimately inevitable and that they will not budge on their side of this. So I think that matters. Worth saying, the other thing that was not really mentioned in the statement was Iran, that all-important context that we know that Donald Trump is going to have to ask for the Chinese help on the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. But almost nothing said in the Chinese readout on that Iran question. All that was said was this: the two heads of state exchanged views on major international and regional issues, including the situation in the Middle East, the crisis in Ukraine and the Korean Peninsula. That was all we got on that. So I think potentially a sense from the Chinese that they're sort of trying to not humiliate their guest, actually. Look, there was plenty else in there about the fact that they'll try and reach stability on trade. They kept repeating this statement, constructive strategic stability. That's a really Chinese catchphrase, if you like. But look, I think we will get more detail, particularly on trade deals and whatnot. But I think from both sides, I would say sort of so far so good, I guess, albeit a little stiff.
Helen, great stuff. Thanks so much. Much more coverage, of course, from Helen and James on that all-important trip from President Trump to Beijing over the next 24 hours.
We've had some pretty significant economic data out this morning, ones that are going to be pretty welcomed at a time when number 10 are in need of some good news. Paul, what's happened?
Yeah, and indeed number 11. Let's look at we've got GDP data, gross domestic product, growth in the economy for March, and importantly, March completes the first quarter of the year. And it's unexpectedly good news. The expectation was, we're looking at this number here, 0.3% of growth in the economy in March. The expectation across the board, economists, because this was March, the first month of the war, we'd see it in negative territory. And it's in more positive territory. There's been a bit of a revision down in February and January. But nets out, if we look at the quarterly number, give you the next chart, and this is an important economic signpost, at which point everyone essentially marks the homework, 0.6% of growth, which is strong, particularly given what's come before. Raising some questions, we're expecting particularly the energy impact and all the negative trade implications of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz to start to feed into the economy by now. But the Office of National Statistics, it talks to businesses, they do a workforce survey, businesses telling them they're more positive than they were in February. Turnover is higher. They've had to make fewer redundancies. A bit of a suggestion there might be some front-loading, essentially stockpiling, knowing that prices are going to rise. Businesses perhaps getting ahead, so the equivalent of us filling up our cars at the pump, knowing the price might rise. But nevertheless, it is positive news. And I want to show you one more chart just on the subject of GDP. We're grateful to Simon French at Panmure Gordon, who's put this together today. Can we see that third chart? It looks at... it's interesting to look at while good news is in short supply at number 11 Downing Street. This is interesting. This shows cumulative GDP growth per capita. So this is per head of population. It's a measure, a little bit of a measure of welfare, of how flush we should be feeling. The higher GDP per head, the better it looks. And actually, the UK, look where we stand. Third in the G7, 3.7% of cumulative growth since the election. Well behind Japan and, of course, the US. But remember, the government's target, Chancellor's target, was to be the fastest growing economy in the G7. Not there, but it is perhaps slightly contrary to expectations and contrary, certainly, to the mood when we discuss the economy and certainly when we discuss it out in the real world, away from the numbers and away from Westminster.
Paul, just quickly as well, because I know bond markets have now opened. Has there been much reaction today?
For now, it's been a calm start. I think we can show you a chart. This is UK 10-year gilts, which is a proxy, essentially, for what the government pays to borrow money to fund spending that it can't cover from tax revenues. It was up at an 18-year high on Tuesday when the leadership speculation around Keir Starmer was at its peak. It spiked again when Wes Streeting's likely candidacy, though not yet confirmed, was announced yesterday. It has dipped off a bit and it's level this morning. Perhaps that better than expected news on GDP, flattening off concern about political instability. It's worth saying bond markets, not ideological, but they are essentially assessing the risk, and uncertainty increases the risk. They still lend the UK money, but this shows us that we're paying more for that privilege month on month on month, and the more instability there is, the more likely that cost of borrowing is to rise.
Paul, great stuff. Thank you.
Well, there's an awful lot of politics going around. Angela Rayner, Wes Streeting, seemingly poised and ready for a leadership contest. One man currently on the outside looking in is Andy Burnham, and a lot of economic data as well to discuss with our next guest, the chair of the Nighttime Industries Association, Sacha Lord, former advisor to Andy Burnham as well. Great to have you on the programme today.
Sophie.
First, what do you make of the growth figures?
Do you know what? I saw the Minister come on this morning, and it is encouraging, but it's not transpiring onto the high streets. We've spoken about this before. You know, in my sector, we're now losing 2 pubs a day. Since the Chancellor became Chancellor, we've lost 120,000 jobs in hospitality, the vast majority for 18 to 24-year-olds who are taking Saturday jobs to get through college or university. And we're losing independent after independent after independent. I've never seen anything like this before. It's tougher in this sector now than it is, or that it was during COVID.
You think worse now than during COVID?
Absolutely.
And why is that? Is that because of international factors, or is it because of decisions the government's taken?
Purely because of decisions that the Chancellor herself has made. You know, she came in, national insurance increase in the first budget, then the horrific business rates reform. An average pub now has had an increase of 76%, hotels an increase of 115%. It's untenable. And we saw last week that pints in London now have tipped the £10 point, which is unheard of. The profit on that is 14p. That's how bad it is in hospitality at the moment.
The message from Number 10 today is that a leadership contest would make things worse, right? Because it would be more instability, Labour could go to the left. It's not the right thing to do for the economy. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree. You know, the economy is in a bad state at the moment and we need change. And I felt sorry for the Minister this morning. I watched him on your show and he's just given these lines, isn't he? I don't believe he was actually saying what he felt. You know, the days are finished for the Prime Minister. Everybody knows that. There's going to be a leadership contest. I think everybody needs to calm down a bit, and it's moving so quickly. I was sat on the couch out there trying to catch up on Twitter, and there's so many rumours flying around. I think everybody needs to calm down. We need to have the best players on the pitch, and yes, that does include Andy Burnham, because if there's a leadership contest that's triggered today, we know Wes Streeting why he would do that. It's because he wants to try and stop Andy Burnham from getting in. And it'd be like going into the World Cup and fielding a reserve team.
I just want to play you on that what Luke Akehurst, a member of the National Executive Committee, told this programme before. This is what he said.
If a contest started right now, I just don't see how it's physically possible for Andy Burnham to participate in that.
This feels quite an important thing that you're saying right now. So you're saying that if a contest was triggered today or tomorrow, Andy Burnham, you know, looking at the rules as you know it, he's not running, he's not in it.
You have to be a member of Parliament or at the very least a member of the House of Lords, so that hasn't been done since 1963 or something, in order to be the Prime Minister. So we could have a cast of thousands. How about a by-election for David Miliband or a by-election for Ed Balls? We're not. I don't think the Labour Party's rules and procedures are there to be tweaked to suit one particular person.
We'll bring on 1963. That's it. I mean, I've never met him, to be honest, but, you know, I've seen a few things he said recently. He seems quite anti the Andy Burnham camp. But, no, this is, in a way, it's exciting times. I think we're going to see change. The country needs change. I think everybody saw in the local elections, and it was the day before the local elections I last spoke to you, and you heard what people were saying on the doors, and you know the public have sent a message to the government. They're not happy, and we do need change desperately.
We were in Tameside, obviously, in kind of Greater Manchester, talking to a lot of people there and talking to yourself there, where you obviously, you know, in touch with what people are thinking. On the Andy Burnham thing, because I know you're obviously close, do you agree with what the message we're getting, that, you know, if there is a contest now, there's no way of him getting in? Or is there a route, if he does manage to get a seat, that you think that he could actually be on the pitch?
I'm hoping there's a route. We need him on the pitch. And what's really interesting, Sophie, is you were getting a lot of feedback in Tameside. People were talking about reform and things like that. And, you know, Greater Manchester has always been a map of red. That's now changed. There's turquoise patches, there's green patches. But with Andy Burnham, when he stands in the mayoral elections, he is bigger than just Labour. You know, Tories, people that normally vote Conservative, lend Andy the vote. People that normally vote Lib Dems, lend Andy the vote. And that's because of what he's done. He's transformed Greater Manchester. We're now economically outperforming every other city region in the country.
I mean, is there a seat? Is there a seat?
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping so. You know, every time I refresh, there's rumours. Well, it's Afzal Khan. Well, it's Jeff Smith. You know, my understanding is there's conversations happening in Greater Manchester. I know there's been rumours about Sefton and Liverpool, but my understanding it is Greater Manchester.
In Greater Manchester.
In Greater Manchester.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess even if he gets the seat, though, firstly, he's got to win it, and secondly, he's got to do it in time before all this is wrapped up.
He has to, which is why I'm saying I think everybody needs to calm down.
So don't trigger it today.
Don't trigger it. It will be a shame. Why don't you want the most popular candidate? And every single poll has shown the only person that can go head-to-head with Farage is Andy Burnham.
My other question as well is, you're obviously a former Labour donor, right?
Yes.
And then you stopped donating because you're not happy with the direction the party's going in. Are there any other candidates that have been mentioned, Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner, Ed Miliband, who might draw you back to donate money for the Labour Party?
You know, I obviously, Andy Burnham most definitely would. I've had some very good, positive conversations with Angela Rayner at Miliband. I quite like. I think Angela Rayner, I think a lot of people need to look at themselves this morning. You know, some of the comments, some of the trolling she's had over the last few months has been absolutely despicable. And people haven't understood the background of her son and you know, why there was perhaps an error. But she's been cleared now, and
she didn't pay the right amount of tax, though, right?
Correct.
She may have been...
HMRC have come out, though, and said, you know, she didn't do anything wrong. And, you know, I think she gets a lot of flack. And I do think it's because she's a northern woman. I just think it's appalling, some of the things that people say on social media about her. So I'm pleased for this morning. When I saw that, it was 6:15. I was up early for your show, and I was like...
As everyone should be, obviously.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I thought, you know, this is good news. I was really pleased for her.
So if it's not Andy, you'd like to see Angela?
The reason I say that is, as the chair of the Maritime Industry Association, we had our conference back at the start of February in Liverpool, and both Andy and Angela spoke. Now, the one mechanism that hospitality needs is to reduce VAT. We're paying 20% at the moment. The vast majority of countries in Europe pay between 7 and 9%. Both of them committed to reducing VAT for hospitality. Now, that would be a game changer. That would save businesses, it would save jobs. So, yeah, I welcome that.
Great to have you on the programme. Always good to get your perspective. And, yeah, in London this time, but maybe next time again, and we'll do it in Greater Manchester. Absolutely. Thanks very much indeed. Coming up, we are going to continue our coverage, of course, of the pressure on the Prime Minister. It feels like a day when an awful lot is going to move in a very short time. And, of course, we'll also be talking about that all-important meeting between Donald Trump and President Xi.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict.
The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to warn.
I'm just going to put some body armor on.
I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Now, the world's first roadside laughing gas breathalyzer is being trialled by 2 police forces in the UK. The device can detect whether a driver has inhaled nitrous oxide within the previous 2 hours. And officers say it could help prosecute drug drivers and improve road safety.
Let's bring in correspondent Barnaby, shall we? Is this a reflection of just how many people are actually now taking laughing gas?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, we have to go back to 2023, which was when nitrous oxide, or laughing gas, as it's more commonly known, was classified as a controlled substance. It was made a Class C drug. That's the classification of drug that's deemed to have the lowest risk to users. But it was classified as such because it does have risks. The kind of duration of the high, I suppose, from laughing gas is fairly small, about 1 to 5 minutes. It can cause dizziness. It's also been linked to longer term conditions too. I think the reason, though, this has been brought in is because it's been linked to road accidents. So most notably, in 2023, 3 teenagers in Oxfordshire died in a car crash. They were being driven in a car at about 100 miles an hour by a friend who was taking this laughing gas as he was driving. He's now been jailed for 9 years and 4 months. So it does have some very real risks, and that's why this breathalyzer, which is quite innovative, I mean, it's not being used anywhere else. That's why it's being brought in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. And I suppose the question is whether that trial goes well over the next month. It will finish in early June, whether this gets rolled out more broadly across the country in the same way that we breathalyze for alcohol and we can use saliva tests to test for other types of drugs.
Are drug driving, is it legislated and punished in the same way as drink driving?
Drug driving?
Drug driving, yeah.
Yeah, so drug driving...
It's policed in the same way if you can detect it with this type of new device.
I think that's absolutely right, because using nitrous oxide for that effect, I mean, obviously you can have it for industrial use, or it's used for whipped cream, for example. But if you're using it to take, it's illegal. It's a Class C drug. And if there's evidence that you have been taking it and you're driving a car, that will be classed as drug driving. That's very serious.
Is it basically just the same as taking like a helium balloon and getting a squeaky voice afterwards?
I don't think it's quite...
Or is it different?
No, I don't think it... I mean, it isn't quite the same. So if you might have seen the
little canisters.
Littered with the little canisters, yes, and so they'll be put into a balloon and that's how people will take it. But I mean, you know, it does... Yes, it could give you a squeaky voice. That's quite funny. But I suppose the point the police would make is they would point to an incident like what happened a couple of years ago and say, you know, this has a real effect, and that's why they're testing for it.
Don't do it.
This is very serious, obviously, but yeah, the squeaky voice, the other telltale sign.
Do you have the sign?
No, but it's really, really serious stuff. Bonnie, thanks so much. Let's speak now to one of the MPs who have been calling for the Prime Minister to go, pivoting back to that main story of the day. Member of Parliament for Milton Keynes North, Chris Curtis. A very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. Why do you think the Prime Minister should go?
Morning, thank you for having me. Look, I think it's really important to start by saying that I have a lot of respect and time for the Prime Minister. I think he's done really important work, changing the Labour Party, winning that last general election, and many of the things that he's done in government. Unfortunately, and as we've seen from the numbers, many of my colleagues, looking at the polls, looking at the results last week, engaging with government and the change that we're making, and have just come to the conclusion that the change that is happening is not fast or bold enough to stop Nigel Farage becoming Prime Minister and to deliver the change that we promised in our last general election manifesto. And unfortunately, a change of leadership is therefore required.
I know one of the issues you've had is lacklustre growth, but, you know, change takes time, and have we not seen this morning the first green shoots of some of the groundwork that's been put in?
This morning's growth figures are obviously very good and important, and we should remember why growth is really important. Because if in the 10 years running up to the last general election, the British economy had grown as quickly as the OECD national average, there'd be £5,000 more in the pay packets of an average working family across this country, and £40 billion more to be spending on public services without having to raise taxes at all. So that's why growth really matters and really important, and I hope in the leadership election that we're ultimately going to head into. We have real conversations about growth. But just looking beyond the quarterly figures, what we've seen in this country is nearly 2 decades now of economic stagnation. Since the financial crash, we haven't really been able to get average wages growing again. And unfortunately, when I look at the changes that we've been making in this government, we've made some really positive steps. We've done some really positive things. But given the size of the challenge and given the geopolitical context, some positive changes aren't enough. We need to be doing far more to ensure that we get the British economy growing again, just like it was 20, 30 years ago, because that's the only way we can ensure there's more money for public services and more money going into people's bank accounts.
Would you back any particular candidate? Do you know who you want to be the next leader?
At this stage, just for the next few hours until we see who may or may not put their hat into the ring today, I'm holding off announcing support for anyone. But what I would say is the best and ideal process that would be going through at the moment is the Prime Minister coming out and setting out an orderly transition and timetable on his own terms for how this process is going to happen. None of us wanted to end up here. Unfortunately, too many MPs now, and we've seen nearly 100 come out this week, have come to the conclusion that the Prime Minister can't bring about the change that's required, and a new leadership is therefore necessary. And I hope the Prime Minister comes out today and sets out a process and a timetable for a transition.
I'm interested, you said just for the next few hours. I'm not going to mention anything. I mean, that's a pretty tight time frame. Can you therefore confirm you are not one of the 81 backers that would help Wes Streeting have enough to trigger a contest?
I haven't told any contender or anyone that might be putting their name forward that they would have my name or support at this stage. Let's see how the next few hours or indeed few days play out, who might put their name forward. But I don't think it's for me to preempt who may or may not be standing in this race. The conclusion I've come to, and I think it's the right one, and I think it's one supported, as we've seen by many people from many parts of the party, is that unfortunately the Prime Minister can't bring about the change that's required. And I think we now need to look towards having a conversation about which of the many, many talented politicians in the Labour Party can bring about that change, get our economy growing sustainably in the long term again, and also start to fix our public services, because that's how we deliver for the people who sent us to Westminster.
Just finally, I mean, I know you're very focused on growth. One significant factor for growth is where UK borrowing costs are. They're elevated in the last week or so because of leadership speculation. I guess it's a sort of two-part question. Do you accept that what you want, a leadership contest, is putting at least short-term pressure on the economy, and possibly, depending on which way the leadership result would go, possibly longer-term pressure? This might backfire for your wish for growth.
I think one of the reasons why we need to ensure that the leadership contest is over quickly and we wrap this up is so that we can start to set that new direction and fix the problems that face Britain. You talk about chaos and uncertainty, and look, I didn't want to end up in this place, but I want to be able to think in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, 30 years' time, when I look back over my career in politics, however long it ends up being, thinking, did I do everything I possibly could to ensure that we didn't end up with a far-right Nigel Farage government and the damage it would do to the country, to the future of the union, to our ability to defend ourselves, to the future of our economy? Did I do everything I possibly could to stop that happening? And I just do not think, and it's been going back and forth in my mind all week, I do not think I would have been able to live with myself unless I felt that I'd done everything that I could. So when I come to the conclusion on Monday, unfortunately, that the Prime Minister couldn't bring about the change that was required to deliver for the British people and therefore stop that Nigel Farage government, unfortunately, I felt the need to come out and say something, because I wouldn't have been able to live with myself if I didn't. And I think we've seen many Labour MPs who have come to that same conclusion.
Chris Curtis, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk more, shall we, now, about the Labour leadership contest. Well, it hasn't been triggered yet. We shouldn't say we're talking about a contest yet, but the possibility of a leadership contest. It's a very busy day ahead in Westminster. We can talk now to Ali, who's in Downing Street for us. Ali, what's the latest you can tell us? It feels like the story is kind of shifting almost by every hour.
Yeah, it really does, and it feels like we're looking at a very important day. You spoke to James Murray. He said what we've seen the last few days would be a preview of a leadership contest. We heard from Rachel Reeves on Downing Street too. She said it would plunge the country into chaos. I think there is a degree of acceptance that what we are looking at right now looks really bad, looks really chaotic for Labour. But the Prime Minister, for now, defiant, and the last thing I heard from Number 10 was that he would fight any leadership challenge. What is going to happen over the next few hours? All eyes are obviously on Wes Streeting, because his allies have told us that he is planning on resigning, and he is planning on running for the leadership, which would trigger an extraordinary moment. We've been talking about it so much, but, you know, this is someone running to be Prime Minister of this country. It's a huge deal. Will we see Wes Streeting potentially throw his hat in the ring, a straight fight with the Prime Minister? Could the Prime Minister get through that? Would he come out emboldened in the way that we saw John Major fight John Redwood? There are so many options. Or will we see a full-blown leadership race? Angela Rayner's intervention, you talk about, absolutely fascinating. She's effectively saying she's not running now, but she's not really ruling herself out. She's saying her tax affairs are settled, which was obviously a big reason seen as why she wouldn't run. Her allies tell me if required, she would throw her hat in the ring, and that they think she's got the numbers.
Ali, what about, I mean, we've heard briefly from the Chancellor, unsurprisingly, I guess, given the very positive surprise on GDP data this morning. What about the PM? Are we expected to hear directly from him today, or is he sitting quietly, expectantly, uncertain about exactly what some of his rivals may or may not do today, like the rest of us?
I think probably the latter. I've been asking Number 10, actually, what the Prime Minister's up to, whether he's planning anything. As far as I'm aware, there are no visits planned. We will not be hearing directly from the Prime Minister. He's in behind that door behind me. I've just seen Darren Jones, Chancellor to the Duchy of Lancaster, going in there, who is obviously his close ally, who Sophy was talking to a couple of days ago, seen as the kind of last line of defence. What will they be talking about? What is going through the Prime Minister's head right now? And you've got to think that he has thought about the possibility of no longer being Prime Minister, because that's saying that Boris Johnson moves, said when the herd moves. I mean, I should say, you know, we're not at the stage where this government isn't functioning, because we're seeing ministers resigning at the pace that they're being put into those jobs. But we are seeing 80-plus MPs publicly coming out saying they don't back the Prime Minister. They can't unsay what they've said. But look, no cabinet resignations yet. So I think the Prime Minister, like the rest of us, is going to be waiting to see what happens over the next few hours.
Yeah, just like the rest of us, exactly, Ali. Thank you very much indeed, Ali Fortescue there, poised on Downing Street for any more comings and goings on the street.
Now, Nigel Farage is being investigated by the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner for not declaring a personal donation, a gift of £5 million. Farage says he was under no obligation to declare the gift from billionaire reform backer Christopher Harborne because it had been given before he was an MP.
Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates.
Nigel Farage is potentially facing quite serious trouble. The Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards, effectively the common sleaze watchdog, has announced that he is fully investigating the gift that Nigel Farage received, £5 million, just before the 2024 general election from the Thai crypto billionaire Christopher Harborne. Now, this is controversial because the Commons rules say that MPs need to declare all their donations that are made in the 12 months up to them becoming an MP. But Reform UK and Nigel Farage say this isn't a donation, it was a gift given personally with no strings attached from the Thai-based Brit in order to help Nigel Farage with his security. Opposition figures have cried foul, say that Christopher Harborne for years has been a donor to a range of political parties and, well, Nigel Farage is a politician, so how could it not be a donation? Daniel Greenberg will now consider the case. This all matters because the powers that Daniel Greenberg has, if he finds that Nigel Farage has broken the rules and he decides that this is one of the more serious offences that's come before him, is he could suspend Nigel Farage for 10 days or more. If that happens, then the Reform UK leader could be subjected to a recall petition. That means Clacton residents would be invited to sign if they wanted to get rid of him, and if 10% of those residents of Clacton, voters of Clacton, sign that petition, he would be ejected from Parliament. So potentially, the consequences are quite severe, but Reform UK say they've done nothing wrong, they've checked against the rules, they're delighted that they're going to have an opportunity to put this to bed and that there is not an issue. We shall see in the coming weeks.
Sam Coates there for us. We're going to have a quick look at the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
The cold northerly flow will continue into the weekend, bringing more showers today, but tomorrow looks much drier. It'll be windy again this morning with plenty of showers, but southwestern Scotland and northwestern and central parts of England will be mainly dry and fairly calm for a time. Top temperatures will be well below average again, with the stiff wind making it feel even colder. Ireland, Northern Ireland and the far west of Britain will tend to dry up later, while central Britain will see the showers pepping up with an increasing risk of thundery downpours.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Coming up, we are going to bring you the very latest on the Labour leadership. Is there going to be a contest? Will it be triggered? Who will it be triggered by?
Will anyone pep up or step up?
Pep up. Yeah, the Labour Party leadership contest, will it pep up?
Yeah.
That's the question we're going to try and answer.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
An interview that lasted nearly 5 minutes. We talked about Prime Minister Starmer. We talked about the special relationship with who he said. It was a jam-packed interview. I'll tell you what he told me, and I'll explain why you can't hear the call.
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Have you seen what Donald Trump's been up to? In the Rose Garden, in the East Wing.
100 days in and back with the grassroots of this MAGA movement.
It feels a little bit like he's a king, not a president.
He is a king.
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too.
Everything in America feels kind of torn in two right now, and it has been an intense few weeks for Minneapolis.
How many more people have to die?
This is not America.
A large and growing protest movement. They're vocal and they're angry.
These immigration rates?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
We just arrived in Doha, just ahead of President Trump, and look at that. The horse-backed military and beyond them, the skyline of a city transformed.
There seems to be some sort of a shooting, what appear to be shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
What do America's Christian faithful make of the president's pop at the Pope?
The ones that vote for him are going to vote for him through thick and thin.
Before anybody criticizes the Pope, they need to think more than twice.
Mark Stone from Sky News. Will you stop buying Russian energy? Is there any assurance for Palestinian self-determination?
Of course.
It's a big shift by President Trump.
This post of Trump, it's a big shift. It's a big shift. It's very positive.
Sky News, the full story first.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming. It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
We're about a week on from those very poor election results for the government, which might still prove fatal for Sir Keir Starmer's premiership.
And now, of course, with the country facing another potential leadership contest in Westminster, the question is this what voters wanted? Well, our People and Politics correspondent Nick Martin's been finding out.
Do you think the Prime Minister should be given some slack, or do you think he should
be gone?
Why?
I don't know, he's not good, is he?
I'm just asking people whether they think the Prime Minister should stay or get out. What do you think?
Get out.
Why is that?
Just bobbins and no good.
Bobbins. Not heard that for a while. Do you think he should be given a chance to govern a bit more, or do you think his time is up?
2 years is only a short amount of time, to be quite frank.
It's going to be a tough one for him. It's going to be tough, isn't it? Well, who else do we vote for? Green Party? So it's too early to say about Green Party, and it's too early to say anything about them yet.
So would you say you're a Labour voter, but you're kind of losing faith?
Yes,
in them?
yes.
The problem, I think, is this. Labour, in a post-Brexit environment, are trying to bridge the great chasm in our politics. You end up being everyone's second-best choice. You end up falling into the valley of electoral death.
Do you think they've made you better off or worse off?
Worse off.
Do you think the Prime Minister is in a difficult situation? Some people clearly want him to step down and move aside, and some people think he should be given more of a chance to run the country.
Well, I think he's been given ample chance, quite frankly. I don't think he's done what he needs to do properly. I think he needs to either step down or change how he is.
He needs to actually provide that substance. He needs to actually win over his MPs, his members, with an actual offer. And so far, we haven't seen it.
Let's get back out to Westminster and Ali's in Downing Street, as she's been all morning for us. And I guess, Ali, there's been some very good news for the government this morning, but they are on tenterhooks, as we all are, about a potential massive bit of bad news to come for them.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah, you know, there's been economic news and we had the King's speech yesterday, but it's very hard for the government to talk about anything real, any kind of tangible policy, when the question is the Prime Minister going to be doing that job in the long term? And, you know, I've been here on Downing Street for day after day. We've seen people come and go, but it feels like this is an important day. But right now, you know, no one in Cabinet has resigned. There is not a leadership race. Allies of Wes Streeting have told us that they expect him to resign, they expect him to run for the leadership. But we are waiting to see if he is actually willing to fire the starting gun. And, you know, I think there is a nervousness because I think no one wants to wield the knife. We saw how that played out for Rishi Sunak, who was beaten by Liz Truss in that leadership contest. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this day plays out. Obviously, you know, all eyes are on Wes Streeting, and we've had that fascinating intervention too from Angela Rayner, who has sort of explicitly said she's not doing anything now and doesn't want the leadership, but has implicitly, I think, not ruled it out. And, you know, her allies say she's a team player, not hell-bent on the job. But if required, she would stand, and they think that she has the numbers. And I think, you know, this party is certainly, when it comes to the soft left, they haven't united around one person. They're trying to work out who that candidate would be. And meanwhile, you have a Prime Minister behind the door, behind me, trying to work out what exactly comes next, publicly standing firm, saying that he's going to fight this and that no one has launched a leadership, so he's carrying on. So it feels like almost weird kind of time warp. I've been standing on Downing Street for days, hearing all of these messages that we're getting, and, you know, we are talking to people constantly and seeing people coming and go, people coming out of doors, cabinet ministers backing the Prime Minister. But right now, there is no leadership race. Keir Starmer is still the Prime Minister.
Yeah. This is it, Ali. It feels like we're in this kind of really, really weird universe. And I'm very aware that people watching might be like, what are you guys on about all the time? Nothing's actually happened. Can you report on things that have happened? But this is it feels so tense and anything is about to tip over the edge. Ali, what is the latest on Wes Streeting? Are we getting anything from his team this morning? Have we got any more details about where he is, what he's doing, or is it just a case of wait and see?
No updates from Wes Streeting's team. We know that we are expecting NHS figures, and this had been talked up as a moment that he would throw his hat in the ring. Look, his allies have long said he's not plotting, but he is planning should a vacancy arise. And technically, there's no vacancy right now. But we saw him go into number 10 for just over 15 minutes yesterday. That was not a coincidence. I mean, I think we wait and see what happens over the next few hours. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I'm not getting any updates from Wes's team this morning. But if I get any, I will let you know straight away.
Thanks very much. Yeah, we'll wait, as everyone else does, to see the moves of the House Secretary, who still is the House Secretary right now.
Which is striking in itself after that meeting a day ago. Also just worth mentioning that the markets are calm this morning, or at least not getting worse. UK borrowing costs have obviously risen quite a lot in the last week or so, but slight marginal improvement in borrowing costs this morning. The UK 10-year 5.05% as we stand. And obviously today you've got is there going to be a leadership vote type factor, and you've got a better economic data type factor. So they're kind of netting out essentially to no real change in terms of where borrowing costs are this morning.
An awful lot coming out. As soon as anything happens, as soon as anybody moves, we will bring it to you. But it is almost like the calm before the storm this morning, is what it feels like, honestly. We'll also, of course, be bringing you the updates from that all-important meeting between President Trump and President Xi of China. We'll be bringing you that in just a few moments' time.
We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Good morning. It is 9 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Rich and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilfred, a very good morning from me as well. Lots ahead.
Angela Rayner says she's been cleared of deliberate wrongdoing by HMRC over her tax affairs, paving the way for a potential leadership bid.
Allies of Health Secretary Wes Streeting say he could resign today to trigger a leadership contest.
Donald Trump receives the red carpet treatment as he's welcomed to China by President Xi Jinping.
Also this hour, we're speaking to former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn about the prospects for the Prime Minister.
And the world's first roadside laughing gas breathalyser is trialled by 2 police forces.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. It looks like today could be the day as the Labour Party teeters on the brink of a leadership contest. The Prime Minister has warned that a contest would plunge the party into chaos as he faces a looming challenge from his Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, perhaps others too.
This morning, Angela Rayner says she's been cleared of deliberate wrongdoing by HMRC. It's following an investigation into her tax affairs. Convenient timing, paving the way potentially as well for her to be able to run for the leadership. She spoke to ITV News and didn't deny she had leadership ambitions.
Would you like to lead that team? Would you want to be Prime Minister?
I want to deliver as part of the team. And I've always said that it is a team effort. It's not one person, it's not a presidential situation. We all have to pull together to deliver that.
But would you want to lead the team? Because the team does have to have a leader. Would you want to be leader?
We do have to have a leader, and we've got a leader, and I'm not going to go into hypotheticals, but...
So you're not ruling out potentially taking over as leader?
But I have said that we have to do better.
Well, later today, we could see Wes Streeting resigning and pulling the trigger to launch if reports from some of his allies are anything to go by.
And speaking to us earlier, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray, confirmed Keir Starmer will stand if a leadership contest is triggered.
I think what you're seeing at the moment, as you see with him throughout his time as leader, is that when challenged, he pushes forward and says, no, I'm going to deliver, I'm going to get on with this, because that's his determination coming out.
Well, with Angela Rayner, Wes Streeting seemingly poised to at least consider these sorts of questions, we're also, of course, wondering what might happen with Andy Burnham.
So here on the programme, we've heard the case both for and against a potential bid for Andy Burnham for the top job.
If a contest started right now, I just don't see how it's physically possible for Andy Burnham to participate in that.
This feels quite an important thing that you're saying right now. So you're saying that if a contest was triggered today or tomorrow, Andy Burnham, looking at the rules as you know it, he's not running, he's not in it.
You have to be a member of Parliament or at the very least a member of the House of Lords, so that hasn't been done since 1963 or something, in order to be the Prime Minister. So we could have a cast of thousands. How about a by-election for David Miliband or a by-election for Ed Balls? We're not. I don't think the Labour Party's rules and procedures are there to be tweaked to suit one particular person.
The days are finished for the Prime Minister. Everybody knows that. There's going to be a leadership contest. I think everybody needs to calm down a bit, and it's moving so quickly. I was sat on the couch out there trying to catch up on Twitter, and there's so many rumours flying around. I think everybody needs to calm down. We need to have the best players on the pitch, and yes, that does include Andy Burnham, because if there's a leadership contest that's triggered today, we know Wes Streeting, why he would do that. It's because he wants to try and stop Andy Burnham from getting in. It'd be like going into the World Cup and fielding a reserve team.
Well, a lot moving already. Let's get an update from Ali live in Downing Street for us once again. And Ali, I guess this morning we thought all eyes were just on the Health Secretary. They certainly still are, but I guess the net is widening somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, obviously those comments from Angela Rayner absolutely fascinating, explicitly saying she doesn't want to see chaos in the party, but implicitly saying that if that she's not ruling herself out for the leadership. And, you know, allies of Angela Rayner's, close allies, have told me that if required, she would step up. She's a team player. She's not hell-bent on the leadership, but she has got the numbers if required. And then, of course, we're all waiting to see if we hear from Wes Streeting, because his allies yesterday were telling us that he's going to resign and he's going to go for the leadership. We're expecting NHS statistics. Is he going to try and do something around that? No updates from Team Wes today. So, you know, are we in a situation now where we've marched to the top of the hill, but is anyone actually going to start the firing gun? I mean, everyone seems to think it's going to be Wes Streeting, and we've seen people come and go. We've been on Downing Street for days now, and you know, there is a possibility that no one starts the firing gun, but it does seem increasingly likely that something is going to move today. The Prime Minister behind the door behind me, number 10, saying he's getting on with government business. The last thing I heard, he said he would fight a leadership challenge. He was pretty defiant in the Commons yesterday. He was defiant with the Cabinet yesterday that there is no leadership race right now, and he is cracking on with business as usual. But, you know, this isn't coming from nowhere. It is not business as usual at the moment.
Ali, I'm going to ask you about what is going on in number 10 as well, because it just feels like the messaging has really, really changed across this week. Do you think that the Prime Minister is feeling more confident that actually, you know what, if there is a contest, then he might fight it and win it?
Yeah, and look, we've seen Prime Ministers before. Look at John Major when he faced down John Redwood. We've seen Prime Ministers face leadership challenges before. We saw Jeremy Corbyn, that's not a Prime Minister, but Labour leader, face a leadership challenge and come out stronger and continue for months or years. So does the Prime Minister think, come on, Wes, go for it and let's see what happens? I know that he was speaking to ministers yesterday. One minister telling me he was saying that effectively pitching himself against Wes Streeting, saying that if there is a challenge, that is not for the good of the country. So the Prime Minister, I mean, I feel like, you know, the tone has slightly changed on, I think it was Tuesday, I was losing track of the days, morning, you spoke to Darren Jones, and I did get the sense then that maybe it was all over. He was saying the Prime Minister was thinking about his options effectively. But since then, we have seen the Prime Minister come out, we have seen him in Parliament, we have seen him looking quite defiant. But, you know, how defiant can you be if there is a leadership challenge and if lots of people put their hat in the race? I mean, there's only so much he can withstand, and we don't know at what point he might decide to just throw in the towel.
Ali, thank you very much indeed. Great to have you there on Downing Street. Ali Forsky there. Another day in Downing Street. I don't think we're going to be leaving there for a while.
No, exactly. I think this will be closed by the end of today. We'll have more, of course, on that story throughout the day here on Sky News, including on the programme in about 20 minutes' time. We'll be joined by the former Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, knows a thing or two about being challenged for the Labour leadership. He'll be joining us at past.
Now, the US President Donald Trump has been welcomed to Beijing by Xi Jinping this morning as their long-awaited summit finally gets going.
This was the moment the two leaders shook hands.
And then there was this spectacular ceremonial welcome from the military. Full regalia there. President Xi told Donald Trump that China and the US should be partners, not rivals.
President Trump described a fantastic relationship between the two leaders.
You and I have known each other now for a long time. In fact, the longest relationship of our two countries that any president and president has had. And that's, to me, an honor. We've had a fantastic relationship. We've gotten along. When there were difficulties, we worked it out. I would call you and you would call me. And whenever we had a problem, people don't know, whenever we had a problem, we worked that out very quickly. We're going to have a fantastic future together. Such respect for China, the job you've done. You're a great leader. I say it to everybody. You're a great leader. Sometimes people don't like me saying it, but I say it anyway because it's true. I only say the truth.
Well, let's go now to Helen Ann, who is in Beijing for us. How has the trip been going so far?
I think think it's been going relatively well so far. I think it's been a little stiff between the two leaders, but I think that would be expected, given the kind of degree of competition that they face between each other, the scale of global volatility that, in the Chinese eyes, was caused by the United States. And look, there's a language barrier between the two, and an enormous barrier in sort of cultural and political norms, if you like. And I think we saw that on full show today, and I think both doing their bit to kind of flatter and show that they are open to business, but in their own ways. So I think from the Chinese perspective, they did their bit by putting on the sort of the pomp and the ceremony that absolutely pleased Donald Trump, a full sort of honour guard, gun salute, cheering children, and Trump made quite clear in his opening remarks that he really, really appreciated that. I think the Chinese know that he is a president particularly susceptible to that type of flattery, if you like. And then Donald Trump doing his bit to kind of woo in his own unique way, and that sort of involved a sort of relatively freewheeling opening statement where he talked about what respect he had for Xi Jinping. We heard some of it in your introduction there, really not holding back in his praise for the Chinese leader and the Chinese state. Look, in terms of what they actually achieved, we haven't had all that much detail yet. We are expecting that there will be some trade deals between the two. As we've been saying over the hours, trade is the easy bit. There are quite easy things that they can kind of sell to each other and give each other access to, so that both can respectively go back to their domestic audiences and claim victory. But we haven't had much detail on the specifics yet. The Americans actually haven't said anything yet, which is a little surprising. Normally Trump is first to jump on Truth Social, but actually we've had the Chinese readout already, a bit more of an insight into what they thought about it. Just remember, there is always an art to dissecting a Chinese readout. It's never enormously direct. You always have to read between the lines a little, but there are some interesting bits. It opens with pretty grand statements about just how important this is. Xi Jinping apparently spoke about the future of humanity depending on them stabilising this all-important geopolitical relationship. There were some comments, of course, about trade. This phrase came up a few times. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a new sort of Chinese tagline. The Chinese do like a tagline, and they will refer to them sort of over and over again. They said a few times about the constructive strategic stability within the relationship. Imagine that we might hear a bit more about that. But look, you know, stability is an all-important word here, given the enormous trade war that escalated between them last year. But I think some of the most interesting parts of the statement from the Chinese is what was said on Taiwan and what was not said on Iran. So starting with Taiwan, actually some pretty direct words from President Xi Jinping to Donald Trump on that all-important Taiwan question. He said essentially that if that situation is handled poorly, the two countries will clash or even come to conflict. Now, look, that might not be enormously surprising. It's not a million miles away from language the Chinese have used in the past. And, you know, it's quite clear that that has always been the Chinese position. But for the president of China to say that so overtly in the presence of a president of the United States and then put it into the readout actually is, I think, a little bit of a shift from what we've heard before. And I think it really hints towards the Chinese strategy here. It is all about just slowly moving the dial, planting the seed in Donald Trump's head that that move towards reunification is inevitable as they see it, that slow but sure undermining of Taiwanese confidence. So I think that's really notable. But on Iran, almost nothing in the statement. So telling, really, because obviously that's the broader context here. Donald Trump very much coming to China, many people expecting that he would have to ask for the Chinese help to leverage their influence with the Iranians to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. But in that statement, just almost nothing about it. The only thing was this. The two heads of state exchanged views on major international and regional issues, including the situation in the Middle East, the crisis in Ukraine and the Korean Peninsula. And that was all we got. I think a sense from the Chinese that perhaps they were really making an effort not to humiliate their guest, to not go sort of lean into that one too much, not to be seen to be gloating, if you like. There was other bits in there about how they should kind of go forward and work together, about communications, channels of communication being very important and so forth. But I think it will be very, very interesting to see what the Americans have got to say about it all. And we look forward this afternoon. The two will be sitting down to a state banquet, so we'll hear a little bit more from the two leaders there. And it will be interesting, as I said, to see how Donald Trump responds.
Helen Ann, thank you very much indeed.
Right, let's get the latest on the economy. We had new GDP data out this morning. Paul Kelso's here with all of the numbers for us. Paul.
Yeah, in another new universe, politically, this would be a good news day for the government. We've got the monthly figures for the size of the economy, GDP, in March, and they're positive, 0.3% of growth. The expectation among economists was a much worse figure, minus 0.2%. They're expecting it to be in negative territory, in part because March was the first month of the war, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, some of those, the energy price shock that we felt at the pumps and starting to feed through into other areas of the economy. Well, it hasn't shown up in the numbers, and that's had a positive impact, despite a bit of downgrading of February and January's figures when it's completely flat. We can look at the quarterly figure, how these numbers compile. They compound to 0.6% of growth. That was in line with economic expectations, but it shows a growing economy after a very slow 3 quarters of last year. There's a bit of a pattern here that's made some economists slightly suspicious or perhaps not trust these numbers and what's driving them. Look, the first quarter of the last 2 years has all been the most positive for GDP. But nonetheless, it perhaps feeds the idea, certainly the Chancellor's position, the government's position, which was the economy was recovering after tariffs and perhaps some of the budget uncertainty, which was self-inflicted. There was a recovery ongoing before the war began. The question is how long that sustains as the implications of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and all the knock-on effects as they feed in. There's even more positive news if we look at these as a cumulative figure and compare it with our peers, which is what we often need to do. This is the G7. I'll have to walk all the way over here to the right-hand side to get to the UK. We're top of the pile in the first quarter of this year, the fastest growing economy in the G7, bar Japan, which hasn't reported yet. It's also encouraging, not quite as good if we look at the performance cumulatively in the growth economy since the general election. Puts us third out of 7. Now, the government's target, the Chancellor's target, was to be the fastest growing economy in the G7, nowhere near the United States. But all these numbers slightly go against, certainly, the sentiment in the real world and away from Westminster, which is that the cost of living squeeze has continued. So what these figures show is there's a little more resilience in the economy than certainly we thought. There's one more chart I think we should perhaps have a quick look at, gilt yields, if we move on to that. Worth looking at today because this is the effective price the government pays to borrow money. And it is highly sensitive to lots of things, certainly what's going on in the Gulf, but really political sensitivity and stability at the moment. It went up to an 18-year high earlier this week when the uncertainty surrounding Sir Keir Starmer's position as Prime Minister spiked yesterday when it appeared Wes Streeting was on his way to announcing a candidacy. Should be said this morning it has flattened off, perhaps that positive economic news offsetting the uncertainty. We still don't know who or if anyone is going to stand and what that might mean for government policy. These markets, they're not ideological, they measure risk. They'll still lend money to the UK, but the more uncertainty there is, the more we are paying for the privilege of borrowing that money.
Paul, great stuff. Thanks so much.
Well, coming up, we're going to stick with the economy and all the rest of it as well. We'll be talking to the Chair-Chancellor, Sir Mel Stride.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was? The conditions are awful. The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armour on.
I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Time now to talk to the Conservatives. We're joined by the Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, who's here with us. First of all, do you welcome the good economic news this morning, the GDP?
Well, any growth is to be welcomed, of course. I think you do have to bear a few things in mind, and one is that actually it's a bounce back to some degree from the last quarter of last year, which was depressed by the fact that in the run-up to that rather chaotic budget that the government had, of course, they were flying all these different tax kites, and that depressed spending. And the ONS has said that probably some of this increase is actually due to deferred growth that was stifled off at the end of last year due to the government's actions. But look, any growth, of course, is welcome.
It's a bit Eeyore-ish, though, isn't it? I mean, if you look in per capita terms, it's the strongest quarter for 4 years. In international terms, it's the fastest performance in the quarter of all G7 countries so far. I mean, look, I'm not saying that the economy is going great guns and it's all fine. But this is good news today, right? Really good news. Better than thought.
Any growth is absolutely good news, but we can't get away from the fact that the IMF, for example, has downgraded growth for this year very substantially compared to their previous forecast.
And it's beat the forecast this year, though, hasn't it?
But if you look across the period of this government, they've made a number of mistakes. And one is they put up taxes, particularly on businesses, which has strangled growth. They talked down the economy when they first came into office, which extinguished the animal spirits in the economy. They borrowed a lot of money, spent a lot of money, stoked inflation. Interest rates have been higher for longer as a consequence. They've run up a lot of debt. And all of those things, when you add them up, is part of the story why, across the piece, we have had very sluggish growth. And that is on the back of a very difficult position for our country, particularly in the context of spiking oil prices and the Middle East war.
You can't make the argument about sluggish growth on a day when our growth forecasts have beat expectations and by international standards we're doing pretty well, right?
Well, I've said that I welcome any growth, of course. But I have pointed out that if you looked at that bar chart that you showed shortly before I came on, the last quarter of last year was very low level of growth. Part of the reason for that was the fact that the government, in the run-up to the budget at that time, had talked about increasing all sorts of taxes. As a consequence, the economy slowed down. It had a real impact, and the Office of Budget Responsibility highlighted that. And we could be seeing some sense of a bounce back from that. So it's kind of deferred growth from the last quarter. But look, I don't want to resolve from the fact that, of course, when we see our economy growing at any rate, that is to be welcomed. But we don't have the right policies in place to have that longer-term sustainable growth.
Given all the uncertainty at the minute about the leadership, are you concerned that that is going to have an impact on the economy? Putting the politics to one side.
Well, it already is. I mean, you can see what's happened to gilt yields at the moment. We've got at an 18-year high, so this affects the amount that the government pays on borrowing, the servicing costs on the national debt, which is already running at twice the rate of expenditure on defence. It feeds through to people's mortgages, to business borrowing costs and so on, and is very damaging for the economy. So the effect and the impact on the markets, I think, is a very serious consideration here.
So do you think that Labour would be best from an economic perspective to stick with Keir Starmer?
Well, I'm not going to speculate as to what's going to happen. What we need, actually, is stability. But there are two things that won't change, I believe, irrespective of who is leading the Labour Party and is Prime Minister. One is that this government has no plan. It doesn't have a proper plan for the economy, and we've seen that from day one. And secondly, the backbenchers are not united enough and don't have enough backbone to take the difficult decisions we have to take to get the economy in the right place. For example, getting on top of welfare, people off benefits and into work. That's part of getting the economy moving.
You, in the Conservative Party, know a thing or two about leadership contests, right? And it goes back to that whole, it's a kind of a cliche that the first rule of politics is being able to count, right? And I'm thinking about Grant Shapps' famous spreadsheets. I mean, I know that you obviously, were kind of close to Rishi Sunak. You're a numbers guy. What's your sense looking at Labour right now? Does anyone have the numbers to challenge Keir Starmer?
I don't know. I have no idea. The only observation I would make is that often in these political situations, people say to you, yes, of course, I'll support you. Don't worry, I'll be there. And at the end of the day, they're not. So I would say the first rule of politics actually is not the numbers so much as, can people actually deliver?
What, don't trust politicians?
Yeah, well,
that's rule, right?
Yeah, don't assume.
Like it.
Don't assume. Never assume. So, but we'll wait and see. I don't know the answer to that question.
So
We'll
until someone has actually voted for you...
Yeah, has a nomination paper with 81 names on it or more, then never assume. But let's see. We'll find out. An exam question to be answered.
Yeah, we will find out. Nigel Farage, thank you very much indeed. Coming up, of course, we are going to be continuing our coverage of the political situation, a very fast-moving day ahead. We're going to be talking to someone else who knows a few things about leadership challenges, the former Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn.
Welcome back. Nigel Farage is being investigated by the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner for not declaring that he received £5 million from a Reform backer as a gift.
Well, he says that he was under no obligation to declare the gift from billionaire Christopher Harborne because it had been given before he was an MP as a gift, not a donation. So that's Nigel Farage line. Here's our analysis from our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates.
Nigel Farage is potentially facing quite serious trouble. The Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards, effectively the common sleaze watchdog, has announced that he is fully investigating the gift that Nigel Farage received, £5 million, just before the 2024 general election from the Thai crypto billionaire Christopher Harborne. Now, this is controversial because the Commons rules say that MPs need to declare all their donations that are made in the 12 months up to them becoming an MP. But Reform UK and Nigel Farage say this isn't a donation, it was a gift given personally with no strings attached from the Thai-based Brit in order to help Nigel Farage with his security. Opposition figures have cried foul, say that Christopher Harborne for years has been a donor to a range of political parties and, well, Nigel Farage is a politician, so how could it not be a donation? Daniel Greenberg will now consider the case. This all matters because the powers that Daniel Greenberg has, if he finds that Nigel Farage has broken the rules and he decides that this is one of the more serious offences that's come before him, is he could suspend Nigel Farage for 10 days or more. If that happens, then the Reform UK leader could be subjected to a recall petition. That means Clacton residents would be invited to sign if they wanted to get rid of him, and if 10% of those residents of Clacton, voters of Clacton, signed that petition, he would be ejected from Parliament. So potentially, the consequences are quite severe, but Reform UK say they've done nothing wrong, they've checked against the rules, they're delighted that they're going to have an opportunity to put this to bed and that there is not an issue. We shall see in the coming weeks.
Sam Coates there for us.
Now, we're of course talking an awful lot about the leadership. Is there going to be a challenge? We're waiting to see. All of this, of course, stems really from those disastrous election results that we saw for the government last week. It's worth, of course, pointing out, what do people out there in the real world, not the bubble that me and Wilf live in, but the real world, think about all this? Our People and Politics correspondent Nick Martin's been trying to find out.
Do you think the Prime Minister should be given cut some slack, or do you think he should
be gone?
Why?
I don't know. He's not good, is he?
I'm just asking people whether they think the Prime Minister should stay or get out. What do you think?
Get out.
Why is that?
Just bobbins and no good. Bobbins. Not heard that for a while.
Do you think he should be given a chance to govern a bit more, or do you think his time is up?
2 years is only a short amount of time, to be quite frank.
It's going to be a tough one for him. It's going to be tough, isn't it? Well, who else do we vote for? Green Party? So it's too early to say about Green Party, and it's too early to say anything about them yet.
So would you say you're a Labour voter, but you're kind of losing faith in them?
Yes.
The problem, I think, is this. Labour, in a post-Brexit environment, are trying to bridge the great chasm in our politics. You end up being everyone's second-best choice. You end up falling into the valley of electoral death.
Do you think they've made you better off or worse off?
Worse off.
Do you think the Prime Minister is in a difficult situation? Some people clearly want him to step down and move aside, and some people think he should be given more of a chance to run the country.
Well, I think he's been given ample chance, quite frankly. I don't think he's done what he needs to do properly. I think he needs to either step down or change how he is.
He needs to actually provide that substance. He needs to actually win over his MPs, his members, with an actual offer. And so far, we haven't seen it.
Nick Martin there for us.
Now, the world's first roadside test, like a breathalyser for laughing gas, is being trialled by 2 police forces in the UK. Correspondent Barnaby's here to tell us more. What's all this about, then?
Well, laughing gas was made a Class C substance in 2023, so it's illegal to use it recreationally, and it's been linked to dangers on the road. So this is an innovative new breathalyser. As you know, we breathalyse for alcohol, and we can do tests for other types of drugs, but not for laughing gas. Now, in 2023, there was a car crash. 3 teenagers died in Oxfordshire. The driver of that car was seen in a video using noxious oxide or laughing gas just before that crash at 100 miles an hour. He was then jailed for 9 years. So that's why the police have introduced that test. Now, you actually asked me about an hour ago whether it was illegal to use, whether it was sort of drug driving. What's really interesting about this is that it gives the police basically a new type of evidence that they might potentially be able to use in the future, because at the moment they have to rely on observation, on video, on circumstantial things, whereas this gives them a new evidential threshold which might make it easier to prosecute people for drug driving after using this.
And I guess it just shows how many people use laughing gas. I mean, you see the little canisters quite often, don't you, on like side of the road, festivals, music venues, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's incredibly popular, I think, particularly among young people. In fact, before it was classed as a Class C drug in 2023, 2020 to 2021, it was the third most popular drug used by everyone between the ages of 16 to 59. So it's incredibly popular. And whilst its effects are not as serious as some other types of drugs that we all know of, we might all think of, it can carry some risks. And I think that's why the police want to use this new test, with the hope that if it's successful, it might be rolled out across the country.
Yeah, you can totally see that happening, can't you? Barnaby, so just talk to us a little bit. So it's effectively the same thing that people use in like helium balloons or like squirty cream, stuff like that.
That's exactly right. I think you're not going to be sent to prison for using the squirty cream. No, but I think, yeah, you mentioned we see these silver bottles littering the streets, and that's what it is. So it's these little bottles that can then be inserted into a balloon and people can suck it out of a balloon, and it carries these risks. So this breathalyzer is one way of tackling them.
Barney, great stuff. Thanks so much. Barnaby there. Now, potentially a huge day in politics, already been a massive week in politics. Let's speak to someone who knows a little thing or two about leading a political party and being challenged for that leadership, no less. We're joined now by the former Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning. You're very welcome. Nice to see you.
Have you had a bit of deja vu, a bit of muscle memory of when you were challenged yourself? Obviously, Keir Starmer hasn't been challenged yet, but of those moments?
He's got a coup going on. Yes, of course I do have a lot of memories of that. A weekend when I got phone calls, regularly half-hour intervals of people resigning from the shadow cabinet, and then deputations saying I should resign and disappear. And I pointed out that I was elected by the membership and the union supporters, not by Labour MPs. And we had a very stormy meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party on the Monday evening following this. And it was horrendous. Abuse was thrown at me for about an hour by a lot of Labour MPs who probably can't remember it now or choose not to. And then I went outside into Parliament Square and there were 10,000 people there wanting me to challenge or accept the challenge and run for leader again, which I did, and I won with more votes than the previous time.
So
there is a point, I'm basically making, apart from my personal memory of it, is that this drama is being played out in Westminster to the exclusion of all public discussion and debate. It's all about a psychodrama between 3 or 4 individuals. Where's the public? Where's the issues of poverty? Where's the inequality issues?
So to that issue, and I know you've disagreed with a lot of what Keir Starmer has done, but purely on strategy advice, do you think he should stick to his guns? If a leadership race is triggered, your advice, if you were advising him, would be fight, because you've got the democratic mandate and no one else does at this point.
I think the only thing he would seek advice from me would be about the future of Arsenal Football Club.
Well, we could all discuss that and be hopeful, but specifically...
No, what my view is, if you believe in something, then you believe it, and you should go out and say so. And if there is a core belief that he believes is under attack from somebody else, then take it to the electorate and get a decision on it. But it's not in the character of Starmer, Streeting, or indeed of the other potential candidates to do that. They see the whole thing as the internal bubble of politics. And this is really back to the sort of 1950s style, when the Labour Party had apparently great ructions. Most of those ructions were actually played out within the Parliamentary Labour Party. So what we're doing is concentrating into a very intense political bubble. And yesterday, as a spectator, it was bizarre. Saw all these Labour MPs being pursued by the Whip's office to be dragged into meetings with Keir Starmer to be told what to do.
Do you think there will be a leadership race?
Hard to know. I think I would say probably yes, but who knows? Wes Streeting may not have the numbers. And I would imagine that those that had privately possibly said to Streeting they would back him. We don't know who they all are. Now that Angela Rayner has apparently paid her debts to the HMRC, she may decide to contest as well. It's almost mathematically impossible to have 3 candidates other than Starmer. It's certainly difficult to have 2 because they need 81 each. And so I think some of those might then say, well, actually, we'll go with Rayner or we'll go with nobody.
Of the names that are, a lot of people are talking about, you mentioned a couple of them, Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner, Keir Starmer, Andy Burnham. Of those 4, who do you respect the most?
Well, I obviously know them all. I worked with Andy, I worked with Keir, and I worked with Angela. Andy always wanted to represent Manchester. He's been very effective as Mayor of Manchester. I think some of his more recent pronouncements about defence spending and things are rather strange because they're moving well away from the sort of social justice agenda that I assumed he was going to follow. But I think he's got a logistical problem of he's not an MP, and I suspect he won't be an MP by the time the contest comes around. But there's also another issue. What does it say to the electorate? You say to a unnamed, as yet, Labour MP, sorry, you've got to resign to make way for somebody else. There's some precedents for this, and they're not all good ones. Harold Wilson tried that trick over 2 by-elections, and he lost one very heavily, even though it was a very safe Labour seat, because the electorate, it was in Leighton, thought that Ted Sorensen was a good MP, and they didn't see why he should be pushed out by Wilson in order to make way for a failed Foreign Secretary.
So do you think all of this, the psychodrama that we've all been talking about, will do really serious damage to the Labour Party? And can it still be avoided if we continue as we are without a leadership race?
I think the damage has already been done to the Labour Party, as the results showed last week, because it is hollowed out on membership, it's hollowed out on activism. And what I found in the local elections was there were older voters were, in some cases, voting Labour because they always had. And when you sort of drill into it, in a very friendly conversation, why? They said, don't know. Just do. And they didn't feel any affinity to what they believed the Labour government or the Labour Party was saying. And they didn't know what it was either. And I think one of the big problems of Starmer's government is it's not obvious what it's there for, because there isn't a clear objective. There isn't an objective that we will totally eliminate all child poverty, that we will totally fully fund the NHS or anything else. It's all a bit sort of managerial, and managerialism isn't very exciting.
But I'm confused then where we should be heading if you're, making the point in your own leadership challenges, about democracy and who has a mandate. I mean, the Prime Minister very clearly has a mandate from the PLP, from the country, and maybe Starmerism doesn't have a clear definition, but a big part of his challenge in 2024 was to get rid of the previous government, which he did.
Yes, but getting rid of the other party is not a programme other than to get rid of the other party. And this is say what you're actually going to do. And I think it's the lack of clarity of the Labour manifesto in 24. And whilst the government does do some good things occasionally, I supported, for example, the Renters' Bill, but the Renters' Bill lacked the fundamental point, which it needs to control rents, that sort of thing. So all along the line, it seems that they pull back because they're frightened of appearing too radical.
What do you want to happen in the next month?
I would like us to have a clear declaration from the government. They are serious about intervening in conflicts around the world to try and bring about peace. The King's speech yesterday didn't even mention the UN, didn't mention anything about that. All it mentioned was spending more on arms and weapons. We can't go on forever spending more on arms and weapons without some strategy of ending the wars. I'm not defending the wars, I'm just saying that. And then I would like them to have some absolutely clear strategy on the crisis of the living standards of people. Why can't we, for example, have a government that says if you carry on raising food prices the way you are to the supermarkets and all the rest, we will intervene and control those prices. The Wilson government did that to control inflation in the 70s. It's not unprecedented. So something dramatic that shows they're actually trying to deal with the ever-present crisis of poverty amongst so many people.
Just finally, I mean, we know what you stand for in politics, and you've been clear about that and passionately stood up for it for many decades now. It's interesting looking at the results last week. You know, we're talking about 5-party, 7-party system now. It's a big spread depending on what you're looking at. And I guess a couple of options there got quite a lot of votes that, you know, might share some of the views you share about. Do you wonder whether there's space also for your party, or is it time to draw a line under that?
We ran some candidates. We weren't ready to run hundreds. We ran some, but we also worked with independent groups in Kirklees, in Blackburn, in Southport, Newham, Redbridge, Tower Hamlets, and Bradford, and a lot of independents were elected around the country. Broadly the same kind of strategy, building more housing and local authority intervention. I think there's a very important need for a coherent left voice, which will drag politics a bit further to the left and be that voice. And that is what we're building on. We're now starting to set up branches of the party all over the country, and I think we're going to be...
But the Greens are ahead of you on that regard.
Well, they are, in a way, but I think the Greens, whilst there are socialists in the Greens, is not a socialist organisation. And I also detect there are quite big differences on policy ideas between the newer Green members and the older Green members, and I suspect they're going to have some problems managing that.
Jeremy Corbyn, thanks for coming. Good to see you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to one of the Scottish Labour MPs calling for the Prime Minister to step down, Brian Leishman.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
An interview that lasted nearly 5 minutes. We talked about Prime Minister Starmer. We talked about the special relationship with who he said. It was a jam-packed interview. I'll tell you what he told me, and I'll explain why you can't hear the call.
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Have you seen what Donald Trump's been up to? In the Rose Garden, in the East Wing.
100 days in and back with the grassroots of this MAGA movement.
It feels a little bit like he's a king, not a president.
He is a king.
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too.
Everything in America feels kind of torn in two right now, and it has been an intense few weeks for Minneapolis.
How many more people have to die?
This is not America.
A large and growing protest movement. They're vocal and they're angry.
Are these immigration rates?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
We just arrived in Doha, just ahead of President Trump, and look at that. The horse-backed military, and beyond them, the skyline of a city transformed.
There seems to be some sort of a shooting, what appear to be shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
What do America's Christian faithful make of the president's pop at the Pope?
The ones that vote for him are going to vote for him through thick and thin.
Before anybody criticizes the Pope, they need to think more than twice.
Mark Stone from Sky News. Will you stop buying Russian energy? Is there any assurance for Palestinian self-determination? Of course. It's a big shift by President Trump.
This post of Trump, it's a big shift. It's a big shift. It's very positive.
Sky News, the full story first.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter, I began by asking,
thank you so much,
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Well, let's get more, shall we, on the challenges facing the Labour Party right now. What on earth is going on with the leadership? Is there going to be a contest? Who's going to run? Well, who knows? We're joined now by the Labour MP, Brian Leishman. So let's just work out what your position is first. So you want Keir Starmer to go, correct?
Absolutely.
Now?
No. Set out a reasonable timetable that we can have a proper transition, and that involves having a broader political discussion within the Labour Party, where different voices in the Labour Party really are heard and they get the opportunity to be heard. We have seen over the last couple of years, in fact, before that, we have seen intense factionalism within the Labour Party. We've got to be the broad church that people think that we are and listen to other people's point of view.
Isn't that kind of what Keir Starmer's tried to embody in his whole time in leadership?
I would absolutely say not. To be honest, I would say the complete opposite. We have seen incredible scandals. I think we're at the tip of the iceberg with what we're uncovering about Labour Together and the intense factionalism that has promoted for quite some time within the Labour Party.
In terms of who you'd like to see succeed, I mean, your first answer alludes to a broad process, but presumably you do have favoured candidates in mind?
Well, certainly I don't think we can look at anyone that's currently in the Cabinet, because I would say, to be blunt, that their hands are somewhat dirty from the first 20 months of this government. We have got to cast the net wider. There's an awful lot of talent within the Labour Party. We've got to explore that talent.
So I'm being really interested to talk to you today, right? Because you are, I think you'd agree with this, you're on the left of the Labour Party, right?
That's right, yeah.
OK. And I'm intrigued by the fact that, you know, Angela Rayner today seems to be suggesting that if a leadership contest is triggered, she doesn't want to do it herself, but she would stand. Just listening to you now, you're saying you want a longer process, presumably to let Andy Burnham back in. Does that mean that the majority of MPs on the left of the Labour Party would still prefer to see an Andy Burnham candidate over an Angela Rayner one?
Well, I'm not going to speak for anyone else other than myself, but what I would say is I think when we look at Andy Burnham's skills and his tenure in Manchester, I think he has moved further to the left with the sort of policies and politics that he's embraced in Greater Manchester.
He wasn't always on the left, though, was he?
No,
Right?
that's exactly right.
He's been on a journey.
That's exactly right. He was. I'm going to compare him slightly to Tony Benn in that as he has gone in government and out of government, he has been on a journey to the left.
What do you think about Wes Streeting?
He's not for me. I would say that he would be very much a continuity candidate from Keir Starmer when we look at his past as well. And I think it's fair to say we need a firm break from the Peter Mandelson affair.
We've had lots of different MPs in the last couple of days from different parts of the party on. I mean, one point that some make is the main takeaway from the locals last week is that a move to the left is not the most sensible thing, given how well Reform did. What do you say to that?
Well, I would say that when we look at the societal ills, and we're not just going to concentrate on England, we obviously had dreadful election results in Wales, but obviously a man of my accent as well, as we saw a very, very poor performance in Scotland again. The party, especially the Scottish Labour Party, has got to rediscover its radicalism. The centrism of steady as she goes and management of the economy, that will not cut it. People are desperate and they're having their heads turned by Nigel Farage in Reform. And when I speak to people from working class communities from all across the country, they're in a bind.
Stay where you are. I just want to bring in our Deputy Political Editor, Dan Coates. Sam, Dan Coates, it's been a long week. I'm sorry, I can't get my words out anymore. It's all your lot's fault. Sam, where are we today? What's going on?
Just very quickly, we haven't had any confirmation about the news we expect that Wes Streeting is going to resign. We don't know whether Wes Streeting has 80 colleagues that would formally trigger a leadership contest. Angela Rayner has given them 2 interviews that could be read 4 different ways, and they had to issue a briefing about what it really meant afterwards. Ed Miliband is talked about in some circles, but we don't know. And Keir Starmer says he'd fight, but we don't know how many people will go into the leadership contest. My analysis, Sophie, the Labour Party has broken itself this week with no plan to fix it, likely embarking on months of leadership contest that will mean a semi-Purdah state where no big decisions in this country can be taken until the middle of the autumn. And I talked to a lot of them and they were despairing last night, but they broke it with no plan to fix it.
What would you say to that?
I would say that I would respectfully disagree with that. I think we've got to embrace democracy within the Labour Party, and as I alluded to earlier on, I don't think we've done that for quite some time. We've got to have an open and honest conversation as a membership and determine what the future of the party is going to be.
Even at the expense of the country at this time of big challenge at home and abroad.
Changes to the Labour Party right now that we're in government, I think, will benefit the country, because it's quite clear the first 2 years of Keir Starmer's premiership, it's not working.
Brian, 30 seconds less with time. But you mentioned democracy there.
Yeah.
I mean, the only person with a clear democratic mandate right now is Keir Starmer.
Look at the approval poll ratings across the country. They don't lie. When we look, as I said as well...
Polls aren't a democratic mandate.
When we look at... Let's look at last week's English council elections. Let's look at the Welsh elections. Let's look at the results in Scotland. People are rejecting the Labour Party. We've got to get back to rediscovering our radical roots.
Well, as Sam was just saying, who knows where we're going to end up by this time tomorrow? I feel like it's like we're on a kind of roller coaster, and we're not sure exactly where it's going to end up on a daily basis. We're awaiting news from Wes Streeting. We're awaiting news from Keir Starmer. We've just got to wait, I guess. But we'll be with you every step of the way. Don't go anywhere.
Brian, Sam, thanks so much. Short break from Sky News. We'll be right back.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.